Hello everyone, welcome to my review of Angel Season 4. The time has finally come. I hope you're all prepared with many snacks and caffeine, all the drinks you may need. This may take a while, they tend to, especially when it comes to me rambling. So here we are. I'm excited to get to the stage where we can review this season. I feel like it's been a very long time coming, only because I've gotten comments about season 4 of Angel since I started the show. Ever since the pilot, I've been getting comments like, "Oh God, I'm dreading season 4," and like, "Oh, you won't like season 4, but be sure to push through it." Literally since the pilot, we've been having those comments. So the fact that we finally kind of tackled that season, it's now behind us, and we can review it and talk about it openly for probably a few hours. Let's be honest. Is quite something to be able to be like, okay, well, this thing that I've kind of been bracing myself for so long is out the way, then we can move on to the 5th and final season of the show. But yeah, you may have noticed with the thing in the corner, little logo and stuff, I'm getting all fancy. Bit of a different setup for this review for the first time compared to other ones I've done. Normally I do record it with my camera in little chunks, sections until the battery runs out. That takes ages. So I've tried to set it up so I'm recording this on my laptop with a webcam, microphone, etc. Which allows me to be able to do different things with of course I point to the wrong screen. I'm still new to this, there we go. So I can do stuff like that, and it's going to make it easier for you guys as well. When I get to certain sections of the review, I'll be able to write it at the bottom, so you'll be able to navigate easier. But yeah, so if you notice behind the curtain there, if it gets darker and darker as the night goes on, you'll be able to see that progress. But yes, I am excited to finally get to this review. Aside from the different way that I'm recording it compared to previous ones, hopefully it all works out okay. It's going to be same old standard stuff. We're kind of splitting this into 6 sections. So we have my general thoughts, discussions, opinions on the season as a whole. Then we get into more kind of specific stuff where I talk about my predictions that I gave for this season at the end of my season 3 review, see how well I did with that. Then we're going to talk about all the different, well, not all the different characters, most of the main relevant characters in the season, my thoughts on those. Talk about some of the themes that I kind of interpret from watching the season myself. Then we're going to talk about your favourite episodes as voted for by you in my poll. Then my top 5 episodes of the season. Then finally we will get onto my predictions for season 5 and see how well I do with that, I guess, in a few months' time when we can revisit them. But yeah, standard affair in terms of exactly what these the content of these reviews is going to be. And yeah, I guess without further ado, let's jump right in. So first of all, as always, we're going to be talking about my general thoughts, observations, and discussion about the season as a whole. And I obviously have some notes in front of me, so if I keep looking down going, I'm staring at my notes. So yeah, it did feel very strange to kind of get into season 4 given the build-up, and it wasn't even the hype. I guess it's the anti-hype leading up to it. The fact that, if there was one thing to know about Angel when I started it, it was season 4 is considered to be bad. And I'd known that right from the start, really. So to approach it being like, oh, how am I going to feel about it? Is an odd experience. I think I had the same experience with Buffy season 4. I think I went into it knowing a lot of people consider it one of the weakest seasons. I'm not sure if that is the case, but it certainly was for this season. And next season, I got a lot of comments for a very long time now saying, oh, season 5 is really good. But again, it's cool, like a difference of opinion. So yeah, it was weird to be like reading all these comments when I read them, like, oh, you're going to hate season 4, but just power through. So coming into it was bizarre, but overall, I actually really like this season. I do think there are some very warranted complaints about it, some very valid complaints. I can see why people may not like it and are very frustrated with it. I certainly was. I didn't shy away from that during my reactions. But I do think overall, I had a lot of fun with this season. I think There are a lot of really solid episodes in there, some exceptional episodes in there, some okay episodes in there. I don't know if there were that many episodes I was like, that episode's bad. Like, I don't like that one. I'm not sure if I really necessarily had that experience this season. I certainly have in previous ones, but I do feel like overall, this is kind of a lot of middling episodes, perhaps. Like, to prepare for this and to come up with my top 5 and stuff. I hate watching myself back, but I kind of need to do it for these reviews. So I kind of skip through some of my reactions and see what my initial thoughts are when I finish. So it's like, oh, this episode is one of my favourites of the season. Okay, I can note that down as potentially being a favourite. And I did notice a lot with this season. I was like, another good episode. And there was only a couple where I was like, oh my god, that was like incredible. It's so amazing, that episode. And there were others where I was just like, oh, that's so frustrating. Which is kind of, I think, a general consensus for some aspects of the season. And I think we all are aware. There's one thing about season 4 I really, really don't like, and that's the Connor Cordelia thing. Looking past that, I still really, really like season 4. It probably is my least favourite season, granted, but I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as a lot of comments I was getting for like the past year actually led me to believe. But that's not saying people, I'm not saying my opinion's correct and be all and end all. That's just my experience of it. Maybe because I got those comments, I was being like preparing myself like this is going to be the worst television I've ever seen, and it wasn't. So I was like, oh wow, that was a lot better than I was expecting. Maybe it's just that. Maybe if I actually had no idea going into this season that it wasn't well regarded amongst a lot of the fans, I would have just been like, yeah, that was terrible. And it's also interesting as well coming off of season 3 into this season. I think that also kind of is a detriment to this season because season 3 was my favourite so far. I absolutely adored season 3 a hell of a lot. And then you come into this, I'm like, My big complaint with this season overall, I think, is how it handled some of its characters. I think the characters they mishandled are fairly obvious. And the potential that this season had, more so than anything, I don't think they really explored fully in some aspects. So yeah, overall, I did really actually enjoy this season a lot. And it was a lot better than I think I was kind of being led to believe by some comments. But that doesn't invalidate people who don't like the season because, like I said, I can really understand why people don't like it. Yeah, I think it did fail to live up to the potential that may have, that had been set up at the end of season 3. If you remember at the end of season 3, I was kind of a bit like, I'm not sure if I'm going to like where the Cordelia thing is going. The Ascension thing felt very strange and everything with that. I didn't like it. I think it's safe to say. But again, there were some really great storylines this season, some great character stuff, some not so great choices, and just some bizarre story decisions and character decisions that I think undermined what could have been some really powerful stories. So yeah, I've just put some character and story choices were bizarre and kind of went against a lot of what the characters had stood for prior to this and what they could represent to some people. I mean, Cordelia and Connor, I feel like suffered most of all. Cordelia because we didn't really see a lot of her this season, I guess you could say. A couple of episodes for like cameos in the first couple. Then she couldn't remember anything. Then she was possessed. Then she was in a coma. We really didn't get the Cordelia we know and love. We didn't get Cordelia Chase much this season, which I think is a damn shame. And yes, run with the story that you're running with, but they then completely sidelined her even when she'd given birth to Jasmine. And it could have been so interesting to explore what happened with her next and how she kind of felt about being violated in such a way, fighting back. I thought she was going to be like one who stood up to Jasmine and maybe saved the day. They just left her in a coma for the entire season. They did nothing with her. What a waste of potential of an already kind of aggravating. Let's speak properly then. Aggravating and bizarre story turn that took up a big chunk of the season to then not even try and make amends for it or make it worth it in terms of Cordelia as a character. It seemed very bizarre. And Connor, they just went down the stereotypical I'm a bratty son route that every TV show ever does, and I don't think they necessarily did anything new with it. And the new stuff they could have done with it, like kind of feeling left out of groups, not finding a place anywhere whatsoever. The idea of him probably being this child of two vampires, him being, constantly manipulated by all these different things. While those things were happening and those themes and stuff were there, I really don't think they explored that side of it that much. They, didn't allow Connor to breathe as a character, I think. And I know some people would argue, well, that's the point of Connor's character. He's supposed to be like that. He's supposed to be this pawn in the season. Absolutely fine. But they had so many opportunities to do more with him and they didn't. And just because that was the intention doesn't necessarily mean it's good. At least in my opinion, I didn't like what they did with that. And yet some of the best moments of the entire season for me was when they actually explored Connor properly. Unfortunately, it was episode 21 of a 22 episode season when they did that. And he had a scene near the end of the season with two random police officers. That was longer than any scene he'd had with any main character other than Cordelia for the entire season. I feel like something's gone wrong there when you're doing that. It's such a back and forth between him and Angel. Like, are they going to have this nice bond? Are they just, is Connor just going to hate Angel forever? They could not decide any of that, I don't think. They just couldn't kind of pick a lane and run with it, as it kind of became this frustrating back and forth. And therefore Connor could never really settle as a character because he just needed to be whatever the story of the season needed him to be, as opposed to just being a character. And considering he was such a core element of the main arc with fake Cordelia, Jasmine, everything with that, the fact that he was just more of a device than a character loses the chance for me personally to have got super invested. And only when it was near the end of the season, when he was talking about not finding a place and everything, believing, just going along with Jasmine's lie and the falsity of her, because it was better than any other lie he'd kind of known to live with. All that really interesting stuff they just saved for one amazing scene right at the end of the season, and then, okay, well, that's done now, bye. So it's weird that they just treated some of the characters that way in what could have been a much more interesting story. And even with the Cordelia thing, it took them so long to reveal that Cordelia was actually possessed and it wasn't really her doing it. I think you would have stomached, it still wouldn't have been necessarily that enjoyable, but you could have stomached the storyline, of her sleeping with Connor, all of that stuff, the pregnancy, everything, her then killing Lila. If they'd revealed a lot earlier, not necessarily to the characters, but at least to the audience, that this wasn't our Cordelia, I think you would have been able to enjoy that story a bit more. But they waited way too long, I think, to actually reveal that this wasn't our Cordelia. It just seemed a bit strange. Obviously, you could have assumed that was the case anyway, just because of how she was acting. But what they did with her character for the rest of the season anyway kind of negates that in a way, because I just don't think she was used right at all, really. Because even when she was our Cordelia we know and love, it was 2 cameos in the first couple of episodes, and then she couldn't remember a thing. So yeah, it was an odd choice what they kind of chose to reveal and when. Pacing wise, it got a bit muddled, I think, with those big revelations, especially because they're just paving the way for an altogether new character to take the reins as the main villain of the season anyway. When Jasmine came along, just reveal it earlier then. It's not like they were going to drag it out for an entire season that is just Cordelia that we're facing in the Beast, so it was strange, a strange choice. So yeah, I think just holding off on that reveal for some time just had a negative impact on a fair chunk of that story. That would have been a bit oh my god, I can't believe no one's figured this out yet, or no, I hate this. At least we would have known that we're supposed to hate it and not just being what the hell have they done to Cordelia's character? Why is she sleeping with this boy that she was changing diapers for a couple of months ago? That being said, not to dwell on the negatives too much, I do think season 4 really picked up in the final third. Definitely once the faith stuff kind of started kicking off and she was brought into it, from that moment on, throughout the rest of the season, I really, really loved what they did with it. I mean, not how they handled Cordelia, for sure, and to an extent Connor, but that is just the key mishandling, I think, for me anyway, for the entire season. But introducing Faith and then Angelus being back as well, Angelus killing the beast, Cordelia being outed then as not being actually herself, Jasmine coming along, Gina Torres, absolute win, loved her. Willow and Fred meeting on screen, Angel getting his soul back, like the best days of my life. And then, all the Jasmine arc coming to a head in episode 21, Connor killing her, and then a really interesting finale dealing with the aftermath of all of that, giving a lovely end to Connor's arc, even if the main arc was and some really fantastic setup, hopefully, for season 5 with the Wolfram and Hart thing. So from that moment on, I think it was such a wonderful kind of okay, this is more like it. It took 2/3 of the season to get its groove, but it did have a lot going for it then. There still was stuff I didn't like the absence of Cordelia's character, where they could have done some really interesting stuff with her. But nonetheless, I think they did some really, really interesting things with the last third. Fred kind of seeing through Jasmine's whole deal, going off on her own, that kind of a few episodes focusing on that, everyone kind of running up against her, being shown the truth about her, everything with all of that, I think was a really great way to end the season. But is that necessarily always worth it when the first 2/3 were like... That's what you need to weigh up, I guess. But at least it did, I think, find its groove near the end. It's better than kind of just meandering for 22 episodes and nothing else really going on. So yeah, I don't know if it can fully feel worth it and earned, given how they treated Cordelia's character, even after Jasmine was born and around, she was just there. But again, to stay on a more positive note, because I do enjoy the season. The cast, as always, were fantastic from start to finish. I think they did the absolute best they could with the situation at hand and the writing that was given to some of them. They really had to try and sell it. I think Charisma and Vincent didn't get the best character work this season for their characters, but I think they still did a damn good job, and the best they could do, and still turned in some wonderful performances. And it's not like I'm against, making a character villainous or anything like that, having flaws and stuff. That makes them interesting. But when you mishandle it so spectacularly, and the only thing you can rely on to enjoy about the story is the performances, I feel like something probably has gone a bit wrong there. But as ever, there wasn't a single weak link in the cast, and I do feel for the most part the aftermath of how season 3 ended, Angel being sent to the bottom of the ocean, everything with that, maybe they didn't explore everything I would have wanted for that. I thought Fred and Gunn might have a lot of responsibility on their shoulders for the first few episodes, because all the team have been disbanded apart from those two. It's okay, how are they going to handle the situation now? That was kind of just the first episode, and then it was all over because Angel was back and everything. But I think overall they did do a good job of dealing with the initial aftermath of how season 3 left off with Cordelia, in the higher planes and everything. Then coming back is when it all went a bit, oh dear, what's happening? But at least there was, I think, some decent emotional aftermath to what went on at the end of season 3 with Holtz and everything. And yeah, the casts, I think they were given some nice comedy to deal with, as ever. Spin the Bottle is a big example of that. They all got to play a different side to their characters, but also the more dramatic stuff, as ever, they really nail. Whenever the stakes are high, stakes, vampires, they always kind of bring their A game to those type of scenes. But when the script also requires them to have a few funny lines, and the classic kind of Buffyverse humour, they once again nail it. And I think season 4 did have some lighter moments in terms of that. some lighter episodes that I think were needed. I think to an extent The House Always Wins was kind of like that. Spin the Bottle was like that. Players, in a sense, I feel like was a nice kind of bit of a relief after all the Angelus faith-heavy arc stuff. So there's a good balance in terms of that, and I think the casts, as ever, were fantastic. And I also feel like season 4 really excelled with their side characters this season. Obviously, we'll talk more in depth about some of them when we get to the characters, but I do really feel like, maybe more so than any other season, I mean, every season has had some wonderful characters, but I don't know if I've just kind of missed how great some of the supporting characters were in previous seasons, but some of them just really worked for me here. Like Lila, right from the off, was firing on all cylinders. I loved what they did with her and Wesley, that relationship, and Lila just kind of owning how much of an awful person she can be. And again, the wasted potential, I think they cut that a bit too short when they killed her fairly early on in the season. And then, yes, they brought her back right at the end, but she's kind of dead now, so walks. But yeah, Lila's always such a fun character to have around. I don't know if we're going to see more of her. Hopefully we will, because she's still technically about Wolfram and Hart. But I guess we'll see how that goes. But yeah, she was an absolute hoot, as always. Getting Faith back, we hadn't seen her in quite some time in the Buffyverse. I feel like bringing her back at that moment to kind of help Angel at his lowest when he'd helped her at her lowest was a lovely kind of sentiment. I loved what they did with that. And I think those episodes really got her ready to, they really showcased her leadership role that she took when she led the mission to kind of find Angelus. She really put Connor in his place and everything, kind of showing that qualities that she needed to then transfer her back over to Buffy for the final few episodes there, where she again was kind of taken into a leadership role. So that kind of prepared her for that in a really interesting way. So I love that we saw her again. She was absolutely great. Bringing Willow into those episodes as well at the end to kind of transition Faith back over to Buffy. Very well done. We saw Skip again, and he kind of revealed a lot of, the long-term plan for Jasmine and what the powers that be were all saying, all that jazz. But the kind of sadistic, evil turn they took that character in, considering, he was in some more light-hearted affairs last season. I mean, not all of them, obviously. He was in Billy as well, I think. But like Birthday and stuff. He seemed like a more light-hearted kind of comedic character at times. And this one, they kind of revealed his true darker side, and I really liked that. I thought it was a really interesting turn for that character. And one that I actually think worked, as opposed to some other villainous terms with characters this season. And yeah, getting Angelus back into it, actually him back in the present day as well, not just flashbacks, the gleeful nature of that. I think it's always a lot of fun to have Angelus around. Gives me a lot of nostalgia for Buffy Season 2, the kind of back half of that, which is still one of my favourite eras of the Buffyverse to have reacted to in terms of like the episodes themselves, interacting with the community and everything. I look back on that period of reacting to Buffy very, very fondly. And Angelus kind of really does symbolise that. So I think that's why I always enjoy him kind of turning up. So that was really great to have him back as well, for that little arc. Jasmine, I mean, I just love Gina Torres, but, the idea of her, the influence she had on the world, the idea of like controlled and free will, taking that away, nature versus nurture. I thought that was also very interesting. And a really nice, cool, different kind of villain to have for the last few episodes of the season before having like a more epilogue-esque finale after they kind of got rid of her. So Jasmine is also a lot of fun. A nice change from the kind of physical villain that we had with the Beast earlier in the season. Once Jasmine came about, she was a bit more passive towards near the end once she'd been exposed and everything. So that was cool. And even a lot of the demon designs I thought this season were really different, unique and effective, particularly like the spidery demons. In the last few episodes, I thought the actor who portrayed that spidery one that Wesley had a lot of scenes with was fantastic. I just loved the creepiness of that. So visually, season 4 also had some really cool ideas going for it, and some great kind of production values with the demon designs, etc., etc. So that was all very well done. And yeah, just the side characters I think killed it this season, so I thought I'd just bring that up now. before we talk more in depth about a lot of them later on. And then, I think, with a few kind of minor tweaks to the overall story arc and the pacing of the seasons in terms of like revealing the Cordelia thing maybe a bit earlier in the season would have benefited the arc a bit. A few of that, I think it would take something that did have a lot of potential in terms of the idea of like making this character like Cordelia, making them the bad guy, is a cool idea, and I think they could have done that a lot more effectively. But just because some things working out the way they did, and I guess some behind the scenes stuff that we're now aware of as well, it was just squandered, crushed potential that could have been, what was already, I think a good, decent story could have been something really powerful and intense, kind of like the whole Connor being kidnapped thing at the end of last season. So the build-up was all there, the pieces were all in place, but then I think someone accidentally knocked into the board and knocked all the pieces over, which is a bit of a shame. So again, it was just, I think season 4 had a lot of potential to be really, really spectacular. It just didn't quite hit the bullseye, I guess. I think it was, probably a few rings outer on the dartboard than the bullseye. But, it is what it is. I still think overall season 4 was a very solid ride from beginning to end. Some really lovely character moments throughout. And I do think in terms of quality, it's one of the more actually consistent seasons. So I don't think I ever got to a point here. I was very frustrated and worn out by some of the decisions this season made, but I don't think the episode quality overall was like, oh god, this is like She all over again. I don't know if I ever really had that kind of moment this season. So while it is very consistent, I think in terms of quality, maybe compared to some other seasons, I do feel like it may have been consistent, but I think it was more so consistently just fine and average, which, isn't anything to kind of write home about, I would say. So yeah, solid ride, but maybe a bumpier road in terms of enjoyment and story arc and character progression than some other seasons have had. I feel like looking back, it just missed out on several occasions where it could have been like, yes, that was incredible. I think it just missed out on like the highs that previous seasons definitely all had from time to time. Don't know if it ever got quite as hype as some moments in season 1, 2 and 3 have had, which is a shame. But I do like how they kind of capped off the season, how they kicked it off. Angel kind of had this vision of his perfect life, everyone like having dinner together or something like that. I think was like the first scene of the season when he was like hallucinating under the water, and then we capped off the season with Connor getting to have that perfect life in Angel's vision, but Angel couldn't be a part of it. The way they kind of started and ended, like interesting parallels and a cyclical nature to it there. Again, they are showing that they are capable of telling a really good story with what season 4 had to offer, but I think there were a lot of stumbling blocks along the way, which is a bit of a shame. But still, I did actually enjoy season 4 quite a bit, a lot more than I think I expected to, given some comments. I think a lot more than a lot of people expected me to as well. So I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as some comments I got say, but if you didn't like it, I absolutely can understand why. But for me, I feel like I am more so easily able to kind of be like, well, outside of the Cordelia, Connor stuff, outside of all that ickiness, there was still a lot to really, really enjoy. But alongside that, the Connor Cordelia stuff is such an integral part of the story of season 4, it is hard to kind of separate that. And you're like, well, that's kind of tainted a lot of it, and I think that's a very good and justified point of view to have. But I also had comments with people saying season 4 is their favourite, and I think there is a lot to enjoy. And like I said, I don't think there's necessarily some utterly terrible episodes in there compared to other seasons, which definitely had those. So yeah, it's a very interesting season. I can see why it's so divisive. I can see why people would really love it. I can see why people would really hate it. I like it. I do like it. But there's a lot of frustrating squandering of the potential that could have made this one of the best seasons in the entire Buffyverse. Just those little moments of like the scene with Connor in episode 21 talking about like the lies and everything. If the story that season 4 was telling was always like that and had explored that more, I think this could have been something really, really special in terms of telling a story with these characters in this world. Unfortunately, that's not how things played out for me personally. But regardless, I think overall, I liked season 4 quite a bit. Probably one of the weaker seasons. I think I'd really have to think about, you know, the lows of season 1 and like it's still finding its feet and stuff. But again, there's also some really great stuff in season 1 as well. I just feel like the way this season treats some of its core characters that had been with us since season 1 would probably have to put this nearer the bottom if I were to rank the seasons. This probably is my least favourite, but it is still damn good. And I think the fact that a season that I still really like is my least favourite just speaks to the quality of Angel as a show, really. So yeah, I'm in various different categories, etc. I'm in two minds about season 4, but overall I actually really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it a lot more than I kind of expected to based on the comments. But again, I was never going to let the comments, even though people accused me of it, I was never going to let the comments kind of, influence my opinion on things. I've never done that. I never will. As you will find out when we get to some pretty controversial opinions in my top episodes of this season. Because my goodness, spoilers for my top 5 episodes, I guess. One of my top 5 episodes got 1 vote out of everyone who voted as the audience. So I'm certainly not letting a fear of having an unpopular opinion affect my judgment on anything on the season. I liked it. Season 4 was good. Could have been great. Could have been phenomenal. Wasn't, in my opinion. So yeah, that's kind of everything I wanted to say in terms of general thoughts on this season. So I guess now we're going to move on and have a look at the predictions I had for this season and see how well I did. Okay, so in terms of my predictions, I made 6 of them at the end of my season 3 review. Heading into this season, just a few things about, what I might think this season might do in terms of characters, plot, etc., given some of the setup in season 3. And how did I do? I think I did alright, actually. I think I got more so correct than being way off. I don't think I was particularly way off about anything, so that's fun. But yeah, my first one was, let's get the easier one out of the way first, I guess, because I put Fred continues to be a cinnamon roll. Of course she is, always. Like, she was badass, particularly in like the Magic Bullet kind of arc near the end of the season. We know I love her. So, next question. And we even got like the ultimate cinnamon rolly goodness this season because we had her and Willow interacting, which I couldn't have possibly dreamed would happen, and yet I got it. I stay winning. So yeah, she did continue to be a cinnamon roll. It's obvious. And yeah, my next one after that was Wesley joins Wolfram and Hart. Now, I'm going to give it to me and say I got that right, because he did join in the finale. He didn't join in the way I was expecting him to, because after the link between him and Lila at the end of season 3, I was like, maybe, because he's still kind of rogue and kind of alone and outcast from the group. Maybe he will kind of be swayed to join Wolfram and Hart and kind of help them out, because I think that's what kind of Lila was trying to convince him to do for a time. Little did I know that, the Beast was going to come along, basically kill everyone at Wolfram and Hart, and then Cordelia was going to finish the job by killing Lila. So yeah, it wasn't in the way I anticipated by any means. I was completely wrong about exactly how it would happen, because it didn't technically happen really until the finale, because, ultimately I think Wesley kind of got slowly accepted back into that group, and he just hangs out with Angel Investigations again, which I like, because, it would have been sad for Wesley to have not made amends with some of them, at least partly. But they moved past it, so that was good. So overall, he did join Wolfram and Hart, just in a way I didn't expect, but I was still technically correct, so go me. Then we also had the Wesley and Lila dynamic is going to be explored further. It was, again, cut a lot sooner, I think, than I'd have liked, because they killed Lila off about halfway through the season. But then we got a bit more in the finale, I guess, when Wesley tried to kind of free Lila from her contract. So the fact that they were exploring the dynamic and the relationship, the kind of growing sense of care between those two, we did get a bunch of that. We showed that I think Lila cared more for Wesley than she was letting on. Wesley cared for her as well. And just those two kind of really broken people finding their way to each other, finding that sense of comfort in each other, quite literally in each other, was a really interesting pairing that I actually enjoyed them exploring and wish we'd gotten a bit more of. Just more of Lila in general would have been wonderful. But knife to the throat, there you go. But yeah, they did very much so explore that dynamic further. I think they could have explored it even further than they did, but life is all too short, sadly, for poor old Lila. But nonetheless, it was explored further. Again, that's kind of an easy prediction for me to have made, given the finale. I mean, they can't just flat out ignore it, can they? So of course they're going to explore it further. But I got it, so there you go. And then this one, the next one I had was that Gunn and Fred are going to take on lots of responsibility in terms of running things after the finale. Because Angel was gone, Wesley was an outcast, Cordelia had ascended. Not that they kind of knew that part. God knows what Connor would have been doing. It may have just been those two. Like, well, what the hell do we do now? Where is everyone? I thought that was going to be a big chunk of their arc, at least for the early stage of the season. I've kind of put yes and no for it because they did have that responsibility on their shoulders during the interim time between season 3 and 4. We just didn't really get to see it. And then by the end of the first episode, Angel's back and everything, so they weren't entirely on their own. So it did kind of happen, just not for as long or as much as I was expecting. So I didn't quite get there on that, I would say. It would have been an interesting thing to do, and that could have been, a strain on their relationship, and they could still explore what they explored in the season with them. But they also had an interesting idea, an obstacle for them anyway, with what happened with the Professor Seidel and Gunn killing him and everything. So, they did have a lot of responsibility. We just maybe didn't get to see it because it kind of happened in between seasons. But still, regardless, I did, to an extent, get some of that right. But it is one thing I wish they kind of did a bit more of. Just, especially because I think in the middle of the season, Fred in particular, I think, got a bit lost and they didn't do that much with her. She was kind of just an exposition machine until she kind of saw through Jasmine's disguise, fake form near the end of the season. That kind of gave her a bit more focus. And Gunn had an episode like Players and stuff after he'd been sidelined for a bit. And they even made a point of, a story for him being like, oh, I've just been made the muscle, but there's more to me than that. And they explored that again in the finale. So that would have been something good for them both to have done, storyline wise and screen time wise, to explore early in the season. But they didn't go down that route, and that's fair enough. And then my next one, the Angel and Cordelia pairing is going to be tested further. Well, I put again yes and no for this one, just because it was tested, but it couldn't really be tested in the way I would have assumed, because Cordelia wasn't really about for most of this season. They kind of explored the distance between them. Cordelia kind of trying to sway things in The House Always Wins to kind of help Angel out and everything. Angel weighing up the decision to maybe kill Cordelia to prevent Jasmine being born, even though obviously he loves her. The kind of love triangle that they had to set up with Connor and everything with that. They did very much test that relationship, and we saw that it could have flourished in Awakening, in that vision, how things could have gone with them and should have gone with them. God damn it. But it's an interesting thing again, because, they still would have faced the same problems as a couple as Angel and Buffy did. And, it was kind of the vision of that caused Angel to lose his soul again and become Angelus. So, it very much was tested. Angel's faith and loyalty to Cordelia was very much tested, but Cordelia wasn't really around to be tested herself because they disregarded her character for a bunch of this season, which isn't great. So, again, it was tested, just not in the way I would have wanted / hoped it would be, because of where they ended up taking that story. And then the final one, I said that Connor was going to be set up to be the big bad of the season, but ultimately wasn't. And I think that's pretty spot on, if you ask me. Many, many times throughout the season, he's been very antagonistic towards Angel. More and more was going wrong for him. He was being scared that, he was linked to the beast and it was kind of his fault. That's pushing him further away. He was being manipulated by all sides from different things. But, we kind of got then the big reveal that it was more so all orchestrated by Jasmine. This was her long-term plan to kind of, give birth to herself and come into the world that way. And yeah, he was kind of the big villain to deal with, along with the Beast earlier on in the season. So while the end of last season, when him and Justine kind of dumped Angel in the ocean, and be like, okay, we need to watch out for Connor here, this could take him down a really dark direction. And they did take him down some dark directions. He wasn't like the big bad of the season, really. He was just a misguided pawn to the big bad a lot of the time, which is kind of a shame for him. So, awkward. But I do feel like they set the stage for him to potentially become more of an antagonist than he ultimately ended up being. He was just a bit misguided and misinformed and stuff. And in the finale, he did kind of take all those people hostage with the bomb and stuff, but that was like the very end of the season, and it wasn't like he was the big bad. So I feel like I'm going to give myself that one. And yeah, overall I think I did pretty well in terms of predicting a few things about this season. I think on a surface level I got a lot right in my predictions, but being completely unable to predict where the fuck they were going to go with some of the plots this season. Things happened in the way the things I expected to happen happened, just nowhere near the way I thought they would, for better or for worse. So yeah, overall I think I did a decent job in my predictions. Some of them I'm glad kind of came true, some of them not so much, but that's the way it always is. And I guess we'll also find out how I fare when it gets to predicting the final season, because my goodness, I imagine that's going to be quite some interesting kind of thoughts on that subject. So I guess we'll see in about 25 hours when I get to that point in the review. But for now, those are my predictions that I had at the end of season 3 review. Coming back, I think I did a pretty decent job. And for better or worse, I got a bit right and a bit wrong, as is the way of the world. Okay, so as always, next up we're going to be talking about all the characters featured in Angel Season 4, and by all, the main ones that I think warrant to be discussed. We're not going to be talking about every single individual scene in the show this season, because we're already going to be here for probably quite a long time. So, yes, the main folks, as always, and once again, as always, it makes sense to start with Angel himself, / Angelus. I suppose we might as well just kill two birds with one stone and talk about him at the same time, since Angelus really did show up quite substantially this season. But yeah, I like that we kind of started the season with Angel. Could he have sunk any lower? Because, bottom of the ocean. So to see him kind of start off imagining this perfect life for himself, which is kind of a theme that they repeat with his character throughout the season. He kind of repeats that when he goes through the process of losing his soul to become Angelus again, right at the end as well of the season, when he kind of sees that vision realised for Connor, but obviously he can't be part of it. So I think it's a big struggle this season with Angel. Oh dear, let's not get those two mixed up when I'm talking about this kind of thing. It's a big deal this season, I think, with Angel coming to terms and potentially accepting the loss of people that he's loved. To start off how, season 3 started off, he just seemingly lost Buffy, and that's such a big deal to him to lose his love like that. And how he had to learn to bounce back from it potentially until, he realised that she actually had come back. And then we kind of have a thing here as well, but it's kind of drawn out over a longer period, because he feels like he's losing Cordelia to her memory loss, and then to Connor, then to Jasmine, then to the coma. But there's still a bit more of that story, hopefully, to go next season. We'll see. So yeah, I am intrigued to find out where that will take him in season 5. But it was, once again, I feel like the leads in the Buffyverse shows always are the ones who have to make the tough decisions and live with them. Angel certainly had to do that with choosing to remember Connor when everyone else had kind of forgotten him by the end of the season. Similar vein to how he chose to remember the events of I Will Remember You and made sure everyone else kind of forgot. So he's had to live with that burden before. the fact that he's doing it again for someone that he loves and cares for deeply, this time with Connor, to give them kind of a better life, a better existence, being able to move on and move forward, in a similar vein to I Will Remember You. Just, I guess it showcases the cycle of pain that Angel has to go through in his fight to potentially fulfill the Shang-Chi prophecy. Whether or not that does come to pass is a waiting game. I mean, I think either way we'll probably get an answer next season, maybe, or I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, as always, I really enjoyed Angel this season, and David's performance, to allow him to have a lot of fun playing Angelus again. I imagine that's always an absolute blast to play that character, just to see that side of him. And, you know, we've seen Angelus and stuff in flashbacks a lot, but we hadn't had him in the present day again since Buffy Season 2. So that was a really cool thing to do, to get him involved due to the connection that he has with the Beast. Get some intel from him. Really interesting way of bringing him back into the fold, and him being purposefully unleashed by Cordelia to wreak some havoc, all of that jazz, and then him turning around and killing the Beast, much as Gaston always wanted to do. He achieved what Gaston couldn't. It's just always an absolute riot to see Angelus again, and to see Angel slowly regain the reins of Angel Investigations, become, you know, firm leader again after everything that went down with Wesley and his kind of departure. I'm still kind of, even all this time later, amazed at how much Angel has grown as a character once he got his own show. Because, like I've mentioned many times before, I always liked him enough in Buffy, but he was just like the boyfriend, really. But, you know, leaps and bounds what the show has done for his character by, you know, giving him his own show. So yeah, there's been so many times I think they've had to show the strength and the commitment that he has to have to fighting the good fight, even if that means, you know, sacrificing a relationship with his son, potentially a relationship with Cordelia, trying to keep the group together and motivated, and the way he was so easily kind of taken in by Jasmine and her whole deal, and openly admitting to the fact that he missed her when he kind of saw her for what he really was. You know, all of them were kind of like, you know, I kind of miss that feeling and that freedom. And I feel like Angel in years gone by may have not even admitted that he missed that kind of presence, that freedom, that kind of, you know, that Jasmine brought to him. So the fact that he is now in a place where he would openly do that, he does seem like a much more open person than, you know, the Angel in previous seasons. I think a lot of that does come from having Connor, losing Connor, getting him back. He wants to kind of create that bond and that relationship, build that back up. Didn't work out brilliantly, let's be honest. But he was trying, and I did like that Angel always had the best interests of the people around him at heart, I would say, for the most part. But also he held Connor accountable for, you know, dumping him in the bottom of the ocean, as he should. Kind of telling him to, like, get out of the hotel, and, you know, it took a bit of time for them to try and grow into each other. And I think it's very telling about their relationship that they only really got along when they were both under Jasmine's influence, and that was kind of what was keeping them on a good, you know, in a good place in terms of their relationship, which is sad, but again, an interesting dynamic that I feel like they just did not explore enough with it, apart from the antagonistic side. Like, Connor's like, oh, I hate you, you ruined my life. Like, there's so many more layers that they could explore, so that they just didn't, which is a shame. That's more so, you know, the writing for Connor as opposed to Angel. So yeah, I enjoyed his kind of whole arc this season. I think was kind of fighting for the people he loves the most. He was fighting to get Cordelia back at the start of the season. He was fighting to kind of win Connor's love and save Connor's soul throughout a lot of the season as well, just because, you know, circumstances. Connor's gone down a very dark path. So that was all a really interesting thing for him to kind of go down, and the fact that he has, you know, what he's been fighting for this entire season is potentially gone with Cordelia in a coma and Connor with a new family, having a new life, not remembering him. Where will Angel go next? Who is he going to be now? Because I feel like a lot of Angel this season, ironically, an interesting character arc, I think, is that a lot of his motivations and stuff were defined by other people this season. His son, his love for Cordelia, when he became Angelus. It's kind of all about other people at times, but that's also a showcase, I think, of Angel putting other people first and how much he does really care about the people around him. The fact that he was in a place where he could forgive Wesley, and he was like, we're okay, right? We're in a good spot now. I've forgiven you. To how angry and furious he was with Wesley at the end of last season. He is very open and honest now, I think, about his own feelings, about his care for others, in a way he was kind of shut off from throughout a lot of Buffy, with Buffy herself being the exception probably. But when we first met him in the start of this show, it took a bit of time, I think, for him to really ease into being open and honest with people. Particularly again when Doyle died, he kind of shut himself off all over again because he was just getting close to him and then he lost him. So we've kind of seen him thaw over time, and I feel like that's really culminated this season. And his driving force has been his passion for the people that he loves. And no matter how hard he can fight, he still lost them, it would seem, which is sad. But now he has the Wolfram and Hart opportunity. I can kind of see why he did take it. Because he's experienced so much loss, and no matter, he's put everything he has, quite literally, he's put his soul into his fight this season, but it still kind of left him without the people that he loved the most. So when he's given it all like he did this season, and he's still left with nothing, he might as well try this new way with the Wolfram and Hart. So I kind of like that he did ultimately take the offer, and he took it upon himself to accept it and not consult the others beforehand, even though they did agree to it. It would have been like, well, I'm doing this, I'm not sure what you're going to do, but they're all on board for it anyway. So that's an interesting thing for him, and I'm looking forward to seeing where that's going to go with this season. But with David's acting and just the sheer driving force and passion behind the character, it makes sense that he's always been kind of enjoyable to watch. And there's always going to be that taint of sadness to his arc, because he's never really seemed to have had it easy. Even when he was Liam, he didn't have a particularly pleasant life. I mean, he wasn't a particularly pleasant person either. But to see that kind of change and evolution now, I feel like season 4 has really highlighted how it used to be for him, how it is now, how it could potentially be next season, which is interesting. And the fact that he is someone who will fight every battle, I think, regardless of consequence at times, if he feels like it's right, if it's for someone that he loves, even if it seems like it's he's doomed, he will still fight that fight, which is a very commendable trait. And I think it's a very brave thing to be able to say you can do. So I enjoyed them really showcasing that this season, even if it kind of left him with nothing ultimately. But it's the Buffyverse. It's depressing. People can't be happy for too long. And Angel literally can't be happy, or he turns into someone else and turns evil. So, maybe it's just never meant to be for the poor guy. But the Wolfram and Hart direction could be really cool for his character. I'm looking forward to seeing how he may change and evolve, kind of running this new branch of Wolfram and Hart, maybe making it something, for good. So yeah, Angel, as always, was really great, and it was so much fun to have Angelus back. Very evil, gleeful, vindictive, a cool presence. Particularly, the rivalry that he had going on with Faith, how easily he just dispatched the Beast after all that build-up with them as the villain. Angelus stabbed him in the back, quite literally. So yeah, he was a fun kind of character to have around, and I don't think he overstayed his welcome either. I don't think they've ever really pushed it too much with Angelus. I think it was very well judged how much they used him, because it was still long enough to be like, thank God Angel's back now. I've kind of missed having Angel around, where you can still enjoy Angelus. And I think that just shows the entertainment value of both sides to that character. So they were both great this season. I really enjoyed what they brought. as sad as the story may be for them. So yeah, that was that. Then I suppose we'll just have to deal with it. And yeah, Cordelia. Let's talk about Cordelia. I mean, I suppose there's not technically much to say about Cordelia herself. We started her off this season, she'd ascended with the powers that be, and then all went wrong. It felt very true to Cordelia that she instantly got quite bored of it. She's like, oh yeah, this is going to be great. I'm looking forward to being this higher being and everything. And she's just like, ugh, this is rubbish, to get me out of here, I'm just so bored down here. And then when she's trying to kind of manipulate things and use the powers the best she can, fighting the good fight, much like Angel does, which I think why there's such a strong bond and connection between Angel and Cordelia. She will also kind of try and use the position she was in then to kind of help Angel out in The House Always Wins. And I still don't know if that led to her being expelled from powers that be, which then gave Jasmine the opportunity to possess her or something with the spell that Lorne was casting. I feel that's still a bit fuzzy. I'd probably need to rewatch and see what I missed there, or if it was just Jasmine somehow that orchestrated all that. I don't know if they actually said this is why Cordelia was sent back down. I've just realised my water's there. That's going to ruin my professionalism, isn't it? But regardless, that was a cool kind of spot to start off Cordelia with, even though it basically came down to a few cameos in the first couple of episodes. Then, when she didn't have her memories, I thought it was going to be it's an interesting obstacle, I guess, for drag out the her and Angel thing a bit more. But then they were kind of really pushing the connection with her and Connor. And the fact that she felt like an outcast because of her memories, and Connor was an outcast from the group just because that's sadly how Connor is. That made a lot of sense. That drawing those two together made perfect sense. I think it made it just felt right that the only thing Cordelia was sure of was how kind of lonely she felt and isolated she felt from the group, because she didn't know if she really did love or care for all of them that much. She just couldn't remember, which is I think a terrifying thing. And all she really knew was that Connor could easily feel the same way. Then they started doing, the kissing stuff, and I was like, what the hell are you doing? And then, yeah, Lorne's spell, I think, is what they said, awakened the possession of her. And then the slow manipulation and grooming of Connor throughout the rest of the season. Then the pregnancy, everything with that. Releasing Angelus, killing Lila, being the Beast's master, giving birth to Jasmine. It's such a shame that Charisma, who is incredible in the role, didn't really get to play her a lot this season. And yes, she was pregnant. They can write around that, just shoot her from there up. Other shows have hid pregnancy so well without actually having them need to be pregnant. Or if you do run with it, they should have revealed it sooner. I think that it wasn't actually our Cordelia. Or at least, the very least, I think they should have done is when she did give birth to Jasmine, then get Cordelia back involved in the plot. Maybe have her in a coma or whatever for a few episodes. Because it was this will surely kill her when she gives birth. Then she gave birth and she was just fine, just in a coma. She didn't die or anything. So it's if you're just going to do that and not really follow through with she's going to die when she gives birth anyway, why not just get her back involved in the action? She was just there so she could lie in bed, can have purple, people worship her weirdly, have them kind of come and take her blood, which was again a bit iffy. It's such a great opportunity to kind of explore her kind of what she in a way went through during expecting when she was kind of involuntarily impregnated with a demon baby. The fact that they had to repeat it twice in 4 seasons probably isn't grand, but maybe it was a matter of circumstance with Charisma being pregnant and stuff, but there's so much more they could have done with it. And if they did play it out the way they did, bring her back into it in the last few episodes and explore the fact that she had been manipulated herself and used and abused herself, completely violated, and then maybe help fight the good fight against Jasmine again. and see that. Maybe they explore it and touch on it next season. Hopefully they do. But it was just such a waste of an incredible actress and an incredible character to have a good chunk of the season her not really be herself, but when you had the chance to bring her back into it, you just don't. You just have her lie in bed. It was just a strange, bizarre choice and a complete misuse and waste of one of the best characters on the show, in my opinion. So it's just a crying shame that, you know, we didn't really get much development of Cordelia herself this season because they didn't use her for, you know, bizarre reasons. And they had a chance to bring her back into it and didn't take it. And, you know, there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff now kind of exploring potentially why, but it's just such a huge shame that, you know, developing this character and how far she's come, both on Buffy and on Angel in particular, I think, to this point, to see that this is what they would do with the main character. It's just bizarre to me and kind of frustrating. More so for Charisma, I think, than for anyone else. Because there's just not a lot to say about Cordelia because she just wasn't really there. And it feels wrong to have Angel, the show, without Cordelia in it. You know, it was a complete surprise when I saw that she was in the show and as a main character, because someone had kind of spoiled that Cordelia was going to be an Angel, but I didn't realise she was a main character. But now I'm like, that's bizarre that I thought that's such a surprising thing because she's such a big aspect of the show, and she's been Angel's driving force for a lot of like season 3 and this season as well. The fact they're just not showcasing her and using her was wild, quite frankly. But, you know, what little we did get of Cordelia, you know, basically just a few cameos, was fun and true to her. It's just a shame it was about 3 minutes of, you know, God knows how many minutes this season, and the rest of it was just, you know, false Cordelia being used and abused, and Jasmine like possessing the body and all of that mucky stuff. And the Cordelia Connor thing I've mentioned many times during my reactions. Not a fan. Icky and bizarre. And just because the show just called it out as such doesn't mean it's, you know, still a good idea. Like, oh, we've called it out, we know it's bad. Like, well, yeah, well done for you for doing the bare minimum in regards to calling out your own plotline. So yeah, it's a shame. I hope they can do some justice and some, you know, not even redemption, because it's not Cordelia herself's fault that she was barely in this season. But I hope they can revisit her somehow next season. I am aware Cordelia's not like main cast next season because of, you know, Charisma's statements and stuff. I was kind of aware that she's not going to be around much for season 5. I don't know exactly how much, but I guess we'll find out. Hopefully we do see her in some capacity, and maybe explore what they should have, I think, explored in the last few episodes of this season with her, maybe waking her up from a coma. But yeah, kind of a shame. But it is what it is, sadly. But it probably is the thing I'm most angry about in terms of this season. I feel like the biggest letdown of season 4 was the treatment of Charisma and Cordelia. So yeah, because while I wasn't huge on what they did with a lot of Connor's arc this season, they did actually use him and give him a lot of stuff to do. Whereas, you know, a lot of Charisma's screen time this season, she wasn't playing Cordelia, which is just a damn shame. So yes, that was that, and it's sad. Then Wesley, I guess we'll talk about him next. I love the direction they've kind of taken Wesley in. Absolute badass now. I liked that they explored the different side to him in terms of like his dynamic with Lila. Everything with that, and the cold exterior that he kind of has for himself now, just because he's, you know, he was made quite cold from the events of the end of last season. There are still moments where he will still melt a bit, and there's still a lot of care in him. Maybe not a lot of care for himself, but I think a lot of characters are also like that in the Buffyverse. So yeah, he was badass. You know, I wasn't like necessarily that big on his response to Gunn and Fred's relationship, and he kept trying to worm his way in a bit, and I don't think he acted particularly well there, but I think we did kind of see him and Gunn slowly repair things near the end of the season. I liked seeing him and Angel start to repair the relationship. The fact that Wesley was kind of instrumental. I mean, I don't care. I don't care where Angel is. It doesn't matter. And then he was the one who actually tracked Angel down and freed him. He was desperate to still make amends for the mistakes he made at the end of season 3. And I think it made his heart very happy to have been slowly integrating back into the group. And I feel like he's kind of a core member of them again now, which is a lovely thing to kind of see that progression. Because he is back in the crew now, but he's still not the Wesley that was initially kind of outcast when, he kind of got tricked and manipulated himself to steal Connor away. But regardless, I love the direction he's been taken in. I look forward to seeing how that plays out with season 5. Obviously, I sadly know how it ends for Wesley in season 5. But yeah, I think what they've managed to do, like the turnaround from the Wesley we met in Buffy season 3 to who he is now, it's all earned, it's all natural, it's all, coming from an amazing performance from Alexis and some really great writing for him. But it's still like night and day, but recognisably Wesley, like between where he started and where he currently is. Just his natural gut instinct now to not trust anything after he kind of misplaced his trust in season 3 in Sarjan and everything, in Holtz, and now he's like, well, that's never happening again. And there's always that air of caution around him now, and sometimes that can rub people the wrong way. It rubbed me the wrong way at times as well, when in terms of like how he was treating Fred and Gunn's relationship. But he is an incredible character, and I look forward to seeing what else they have in store for him. So yeah, I feel like Wesley's arc this season, there's a lot of him finding himself in his new self, if that makes sense. Finding his place all over again, seeming like the outcast. Lila trying to hammer home that he was an outcast, but he still found his way back into the group in his own kind of unique way. And he does bring kind of unique skill sets, I think, to that team, so he is kind of needed. He does have that place there. Even if he's not like the Wesley we first met in Buffy, or even the Wesley we met again in Angel season 1. But yeah, another really fascinating character overall that I'm excited to see more of. I do feel like out of most characters in the Buffyverse, Wesley's development has been, I think, one of the most dramatic, but also therefore one of the most impressive. Because you can see like Watcher Wesley to Rogue Demon Hunter Wesley, Badass Wesley. Someone can like show you like 2 different clips and like, there's no way in hell that they sell that transformation, and yet they absolutely do. So yeah, some incredible development for him. I like the cautious nature to him, the bravery he's kind of shown. When he was kind of taken by the spider demon-y thing in like episode 19 or 20, I think it was. I think it was 20. The initiative he kind of shown there, the intelligence he shows to try and get answers out of that creature, even when it could have killed him at any second. He's come such a long way from the guy who's very insecure about himself, he was his own worst enemy. To an extent, he can still be his own worst enemy. So I think part of him was kind of, for a time, like, well, if they think I'm such this terrible, awful person that shouldn't be spoken to, I'm just going to be that person. I don't need friends, I don't need that attachment. But he still kind of very much needs that encouragement, I think, and he very much needs vindication from people and love for people, because they've hinted very much in the past about his father and everything. He kind of always sought vindication from his dad and never quite got it. And I think that gave him kind of an inferiority complex, and I think he's slowly but surely kind of pushing through that. Or at least in a similar way to, I think, Angel's being a bit more open about his emotions now. I think Wesley's kind of open about that as well, or at least he's kind of accepted that part of himself much more than he used to. Because you don't see him like slip and fall and do all the slapstick stuff anymore, just because he is really capable and he's unlocked that potential in him now. It took a very traumatic thing for everyone with the whole Connor situation last season for him to get to that point, but he has got to that point. So that's good, and he's still making amends. He's still kind of, slowly rebuilding bridges with everyone, and hopefully they will continue with that next season. But we shall see. But what it comes down to is, however dark and dangerous and deadly and badass Wesley has become, a lot of his arc and a lot of his kind of plot line, his storyline at the very end of this season was trying to save Lila and get her out of this contract and just give her some peace, give her some happiness. So that's still very much who Wesley is deep down, and he didn't, he wasn't openly saying, "Oh, look how great I am. I'm doing this for Lila because I'm such a good person." He just is, and he doesn't need to openly show it. And yet he has those darker sides to him as well. It's just a very incredibly layered and complex character at this point that I always enjoy seeing. So look forward to more of him next season. And then Gunn. I really like Gunn a lot. I think the arc they gave him a lot of this season, I don't know, again, if it's just a purposeful arc or he had been somewhat neglected up to this point. They thought, oh, let's call ourselves out again as writers and make it seem like we did it all on purpose. And say that, oh, Gunn's just become the muscle, but there's more to him than that. And just give him that as a story arc. Again, it's just, a lot of these characters are very insecure about themselves, very inferior. And I think that's why we love them, because who doesn't feel insecure about themselves all the damn time? I know I do, about 50 times a day. So that's something I really love about Wesley. That's something I really love about Gunn as well. That and Gunn's kind of loyalty to people, as long as it's not, super tested beyond repair, in a sense that it kind of was, I think, with the Wesley at the end of last season, a bit with the whole Fred situation this season as well. But again, they're building those bridges, I think, slowly. They're showing some care for each other again, which is lovely. But yeah, I like that they at least acknowledged and addressed that it was not like, well, Gunn, you go over there and fight that thing while we do all this other stuff. They put him front and centre in an episode like Players. I liked him going undercover, still showing like his childish side, his more like lovable side as well. And the passion and loyalty he has for people like Fred. The fact that, he murdered a guy and pushed him into the portal, so he didn't have to make Fred, or like watch Fred do it and have Fred have to live with that herself, killing Seidel. He's made these huge kind of plays and huge moves, and ultimately I feel like it cost him that relationship with Fred, because they never recovered from it. But I still don't think he would take it back and say, oh, I wish I hadn't done that now. I still feel like he wouldn't want Fred to have been the one to do that, even if he knew it would lead them to break up. But the show has at times, I think, not fleshed him out as much as they should have done. And this season, I think, was a bit better for that. Maybe not always, but at least we got some. Particularly Players, I think, was a big part of that. And the finale as well, when he kind of assumed, they're just going to make me security. But Wolfram and Hart actually had a bigger role to him. It just shows that he has a lot of potential. I'm looking forward in particular to what Wolfram and Hart is going to do for Gunn's character and how he may or may not change, what role he's going to play there. If it's not security, what do they have in mind for him? I think that's going to be a really cool thing that hopefully puts him front and centre, because J. August Richards is fantastic. And when they do focus on Gunn, I think he does shine. And it will be cool. I liked Fred and Gunn together. I think they were a nice couple. But they had done other things, I think, with Fred separately as well. Like the whole point of Supersymmetry in the first place, was her writing this paper, getting that published, and it was exploring a bit about her trauma being in Pylia and the revelations about how she got there. Whereas still, when Gunn did have screen time, I feel like it was, Wesley, you stay away from Fred, or I'm going to help Fred do this now. It was more about that relationship, I think, than Fred, I think, got a nice balance of stories with that. So the fact that, they did break them up, it was probably good for Gunn's character ultimately. And I feel like he had a very real connection with Gwen. I really liked that pairing in that episode, and seeing him go undercover, live the James Bond fantasy. I like that playful side to Gunn that doesn't come out that often. The fact that he still has all this trauma about his sister and stuff. He still has these connections, and I don't think he's really lost sight of who he used to be. Some people will get lost along the way, and people will change and evolve because we need to. But I think Gunn, while he has changed and grown a lot, he considers Angel a friend now. And you go to the start of season 3, he said that was never going to happen. But he has since called Angel his friend, and probably would die for anyone in that Angel Investigations team. The fact that he is still, I think, true to his roots at times. We saw when they were all in the sewers and he kind of found people that he recognised. He's not kind of ashamed of that life he used to live. It still informs a lot of who he is. And it's kind of a refreshing thing because, a character like Angel, you can kind of understand it in his case, but he's very much like, oh no, not a big fan of my past. I need to make amends for it. I don't really want to discuss it or talk about it. Let's not bring that up. It kind of haunts me a lot. And I think a lot of characters can be like that. Wesley can be like that as well now. Fred had to deal with a lot of trauma from being in Pylia. Lorne likes to run away from home and not really talk about his family and stuff. I feel like Gunn, he obviously has some trauma from his past, but he will still push through it and kind of learn from it and accept it and openly speak about it in a way that a lot of other characters don't. And I feel like that's actually a breath of fresh air. That's something I really enjoy about his character. So to see him get a bit more focus and just they showcase, he's really capable. He's not just a muscle. He's not just security. There's a lot more to him, and there is a lot of potential to him. I hope they do explore that next season. I mean, it was a cool story for him, and to show how it feels like he's very easy to kind of form an emotional connection with, as we saw with him and Gwen in Players. Him and Fred's relationship and everything. The fact that he was introduced as this kind of vampire hunter, and then by the end of that season, a few episodes later, he's kind of basically one of the crew. He seems to find a place in any team fairly easily. He's very much, I've mentioned before, I really enjoy his loyalty to people. He feels like a true team player. He may complain about his role in the team at times, and I think he should do, because he has been relegated to the background before, but he is also he can be very independent when he needs to. Like the pairing of him and Connor, they had a few scenes together. It was like him and Connor did their own little mission. Can't remember what episode it was, but they were a fantastic pairing, and I wish we got more of it. We didn't, but it showcased not only what Connor was capable of if you actually paired him with other characters other than fake Cordelia for a change, but Gunn is just one of those characters I think you can pair him with any character and there'd be some entertainment value to come of it, even if he's just looking at them like, you are absolutely insane, I hate you so much. He always has something like witty to say. Or he can also be very emotional and emotive with someone like Fred or Gwen. So I really like that they did take some time to show that this season, and proving his worth, I think, with the end, that scene with him like staring down the jaguar, whatever it was, the panther, just unlocking that potential. And I think there's going to be a lot more to him that hopefully they will reveal in season 5. So yeah, I really like Gunn this season a hell of a lot. Sometimes his attitude to things had rubbed me the wrong way in the past, but I do feel like he's still learning and growing from that and maturing. So another fantastic character that I'm looking forward to seeing where they take in the final season. And then we come to Fred. We all know I love her. We all know she's my favourite. She's my cinnamon roll. Again, I feel like the middle of this season in particular didn't really use her for anything other than exposition. She was just, she was kind of exposition machine. But we've got some good stuff with her at the start of the season when they weren't afraid to, again, explore the fact that, she wants to write papers and stuff. She's a very smart person. Explore exactly what Pylia did to her and the fact that she was in a position like, I'm going to kill this guy for what he did to me. Obviously, Gunn then saved her from having to do that. But I wonder, if there's a debate, like, would she have gone through with it? I feel like she may well have done, especially when we saw how she was with the whole Jasmine thing when she was on the run in the Magic Bullet. She's capable of a lot of things. She took down that demon on her own and everything there. She's very capable, and she's not afraid of like picking up a gun and getting involved in the battle when she needs to, which is a side of her I really enjoy as well. There's a lot of kind of fierceness behind her. And I feel like that would cause people to underestimate her, both intellectually, because she could be, especially early season 3, maybe not so much now, kind of an outcast a bit and socially awkward and stuff. But now she's just, in an adorable way, still socially awkward at times. But when it comes down to it, she'll be like, right, I'm going to take this gun now, because I don't trust you, Wolfram and Hartlot. Let's, give me the tour, but I'm going to be pointing this gun at you the entire time. So I love that side to her, and I love that they did show her intelligence and her capability, and that she can do things on her own. It's not just, should she be with Wesley? Should she be with Gunn? She, let's have her make out with Angel for reasons. There's also, they're taking the time, okay, she's very capable. She got this paper published. She saw through Jasmine, and she made the most of the situation. Very clever plan with, shooting a bullet through Jasmine and then into Angel to kind of get him back on side. And from there, kind of getting the whole gang back together. All started with her. The only reason they were in a position to be able to stop Jasmine was because of Fred. So that just shows the utter strength that she has and the commitment to the cause that she has, the utter belief in what's right that she has. I really enjoyed that. But there's also, that great deal of care as well with her. When Cordy was in a coma, she still took the time to kind of talk to him and be like, Cordy, I don't know what to do, She still had that outlet. She still cared for Cordelia's welfare. Everything with that. It's just a lovely familial bond that these guys all have. And to think that, we went 2 whole seasons without her being part of the team is bizarre to me now. Obviously, she was in season 2, but right at the end. She didn't really find her place, I think, until Fredless in season 3. But now I'm just like, God, she's such an integral part of this team, and I love her. And she can bring to the party, I think, what Wesley can in terms of the research and stuff. And when Wesley was kicked out last season, she obviously had to take on a lot of what he brought. Wesley's a bit more capable at it. You could see that she struggled a bit in terms of certain things. She wasn't quite as much of an expert, but she's still very capable there. But she's physically capable as well, and she's a sweeter, softer version of Wesley, I guess. So I enjoy all the different kind of sides to her character, but there are some darker aspects to her as well, like the whole Seidel thing, and what she needed to do to kind of get the job done when she could have escaped Jasmine's thrall and everything. So yeah, I adore Fred. It's not a secret, it's not a shocking revelation that I bloody love her. So yes, she's fantastic. And then I guess we'll quickly talk about Lorne, because again, I feel like they didn't do much with him this season. I hope we get a proper Lorne-centric episode or 2 next season. Because we've got The House Always Wins. I feel like we didn't really get much after that. We did have an episode where he was kind of telling the story back and framing it around him as the narrator. But he was more so just kind of there in the background, just to make a few funny lines, sing a few songs. I feel like there's so much more to Lorne, so much more to peel away at that they just haven't explored yet. So I'm hoping season 5 will be the season to do that. But regardless, I liked him kind of starting off making a name for himself in Vegas, but there was, a very darker side to it, and he was kind of desperate to escape. And that just, again, a big showcase of how much he feels like he needs that team now. When he was introduced, he had the Caritas and everything. He had his place in the demon world. He knew what he wanted. He ran that bar. That was kind of how he made his living. Then that was taken away from him. Moved in with the group, and now they're kind of an essential part of his life now. So even that development in itself is really cool to see. But he's also a lot of fun to have around. He very much breaks up the more tense sequences, but he can be serious and dramatic in a not in a OTT way where he needs to be, like the scene where he kind of gets involved to expose the fact that Cordelia is evil. Everything with that, pretending he has a way of exposing her and stuff. So again, there's a lot of intelligence to him, but he's a very light-hearted, fun character that I think the show definitely needed, and I'm glad that he kind of is now a main cast member, because obviously Andy Hallett is fantastic. So I enjoy everything with him that he brings. I do think he was a bit underused overall this season. I would have liked to have seen a lot more from him. I feel like there must be a good story or two there that you can get from him that we haven't really peeled away at yet. I know he wants to shy away from his past, and we're not like in the dimension that he's from or anything. I think we did get an episode this season where someone from Pylia did show up, and we got a bit of camaraderie there. But it would be cool if he has like a lot more to him that we haven't realised yet. But regardless, I think a character like Lorne in a show that can get as dark as Angel does is very much needed. Anya in Buffy was very much kind of like comic relief at times, a bit lighthearted. Andrew was as well in the last season of Buffy. I feel like Lorne very much brings that to the Angel crew. And I wouldn't want it any other way, I say. So I love Lorne. He's such a fun character. But I do feel like he was a bit underutilized this season, and they could have done a lot more with him. So hopefully season 5 rectifies that. And then of like the kind of core characters, guess who we've saved to the end, folks? Of course, it's Connor himself. Now, Vincent, fantastic, such a great actor. It's a shame that they only let him, have good material in like the last 2 episodes of the season. But apart from that, there's so much potential for Connor. I've talked about this in my reactions, obviously. I feel like there was so much potential for Connor to easily be one of the most interesting characters in the Buffyverse. They did not kind of go through with it because they just opted for he's going to hate Angel unwaveringly, or unless the plot requires him to kind of like him a bit, and then we'll just send him right back to hating him again because the plot requires us to. And he was just manipulated by, the Beast. He was manipulated by Cordelia, manipulated by Holt, all of that, which in itself is a very interesting story. But I think they needed to get to the place he was in the church scene in episode 21 so much sooner to actually explore that idea, or at least give him scenes with someone outside of fake Cordelia. Because that was just Connor's manipulated. That's his screen time for this episode. He's being groomed. And, that doesn't give a chance to develop the Angel and Connor relationship, because they barely gave them any scenes together, really. And they barely interacted if you really look back at all the episodes and stuff. But there's so much potential, like when they paired him with Gunn. I really loved that dynamic, and they just showed that Connor is capable of having some really interesting dynamics with other characters. But this season just outright refused to let that happen for some reason. And yeah, the idea that he would rather believe the lie that Jasmine has because it's better than, any other lie that he's kind of had to live through is awful and heartbreaking, and such a cool bloody idea for a character, and such a heartbreaking story to tell. And for some reason they didn't tell it. They just decided to have him be classic bratty teenager. He's being manipulated to hate Angel, and they don't want to decide if he will come around on Angel or not. And the fact that he never quite fit him in anything, that's really cool. And I get, if you not want him to fit in with everyone, he can't have scenes with like other characters all that often. But the fact that he had scenes like the pairing of him and Gunn at all, but still felt like he couldn't fit in anywhere, it means you still can pair him with other characters. It's just, again, like with Cordelia, I feel like it was such a huge waste. But unlike Cordelia, I feel like at least Connor did get a very good ending to his arc, if that is it. We'll kind of get onto that in my predictions. But he did have a good end to the story, even if it's one kind of caked in tragedy a bit, more so for Angel than Connor, I guess, because Connor doesn't know any better. But the idea that they've built him up so he never had a place to fit in all season. And, maybe things with him and Angel were never going to be okay just because of what happened with Holt and Wesley and everything. The fact that he then is given a place where he belongs at the end, and given this other family, is a really lovely end to his arc. And it felt very satisfying, even if the journey before it wasn't at all. So it is kind of incredible that the finale could really sell and give a wonderful end to Connor's arc this season, when a lot of it has been really frustrating and not kind of meandering, not really going too many places. Because, Connor had already been manipulated enough by Holtz to hate Angel. I don't know why I needed to dedicate so much time to him also being manipulated by Cordelia and then Jasmine, it felt a bit unnecessary. It felt like a bit too much. Like, he already doesn't like Angel. I'm not sure you really need to hammer this point home, or at least explore the fact that it's not working with him and Angel. They're not quite getting along because they barely had them have just one-on-one scenes, and instead they thought, oh, I know, let's have a love triangle happen. Let's have him be infatuated with Cordelia, and get her pregnant and everything. It's just, they set up a really cool thing, I think, with him at the end of last season when they brought him back as a teenager, and they just went the predictable routes with his characterization. And then in terms of the storylines they also gave him to go with that limited characterization, that everyone had kind of seen on every TV show ever, the bratty teen, it then didn't allow him to fully develop. And again, maybe that was the point, but I don't think that necessarily makes it a good decision or okay. Because they also showcased that Connor can be incredibly complex and interesting, like the last few episodes did. It just makes me mad that we could have had that really interesting side to Connor all season, and because of the story they decided to tell and the way they decided to tell it, we just couldn't get that until it was way too late in the game. And, you know, the frustrating side to Connor's story and everything, you can't blame on Connor himself because he was just being manipulated left, right and centre. You know, it's not really a fault of his, because from as long as he can remember, he's being manipulated by Holtz and then onwards. But yeah, it's just kind of a crying shame that it all came down to that, sadly. But regardless, it did end on a huge high note, I think. And the scene with Connor talking to unconscious Cordelia in the church in episode 21 was far and away one of my favourite scenes of the season, potentially one of my favourite scenes of Angel. Easily Connor's finest hour. And the fact that he felt so lost and helpless and everything in the finale after he had to kill his own daughter, which again is a pretty bloody awful thing for him to have to do. But it just shows that he does know what's right when he doesn't have these people influencing him. Just wish we could have had more of that, because then people probably would have liked him a lot more. He then felt in a position like he doesn't really have anything, and you know, the world didn't deserve to have his daughter, so he's going to blow up a load of people, just becoming a danger to himself all over again, much like other characters have been in the past, but for some reason the show treated them differently. So yeah, tragic, but also the fact that he now has the life he would have always wanted, I think, not burdened by the memories of what he went through prior. It is it's a bittersweet ending to that character, if that is like the end of him. And yeah, it's an odd one because you can't really hold what happened and what the character is against the character himself. It's just the story the writers decided to choose for him this season. But yeah, Connor as a character and Vincent, you know, as an actor, should have been given so much more, and Connor had the potential to be incredibly interesting and complex, but they chose not to explore that with their story, which is a crying shame. But again, not something we can change now, especially not me ranting, this random 24-year-old watching Angel and Buffy 20 years late. But yeah, it's a shame. But regardless, I think Connor did have a good end to his arc, even if I didn't really enjoy the rest of it. And Vincent has been really great with the material he got throughout. That's never kind of been, you know, the failings of Connor's characterization and stuff, I don't think has ever been down to Vincent at all. It's more so been a story and writing standpoint. But yeah, that's kind of all the main characters, I suppose. So yeah, I've kind of got a few secondary characters, as we always kind of do as well. Again, not every single character in the season, but we would be here for a very, very long time. So yes, we're going to talk about, you know, people outside the main cast now. Hello. I'm about to talk about Lila, if you have any opinions. What do you think about Lila? Do you think she was killed off too soon? Thanks for your input. Okay, so next up is going to be Lila, who I think we all are aware I really, really enjoy as a character, particularly this season. I think she just got, more and more enjoyable to watch as time went on. Unfortunately, as time went on, she got closer and closer to death because she was killed. But regardless, as season 3 was progressing, I was like, I'm enjoying Lila more and more. She's just so unapologetically horrible. I was always kind of keen to maybe explore the backstory for her, and like, how did she even really get that way? I know she felt like she needed to be that cold and that kind of, mean-spirited in order to survive in the business she was in. But still, there's something refreshing, I guess, especially with shows nowadays. I feel like so many villains need to have like the tragic backstories, and you need to really feel sorry for them. It makes it actually shockingly refreshing when people are just mean. And Lila had a lot of elements to that, but she really owned it. And, there were a few layers to her as well, in the fact that, pairing her up with Wesley this season, I thought was a really interesting idea. And I loved the dynamic between them. It showed almost a jealous side to Lila. And I think she was kind of capable of caring for people. I think she did care for Wesley maybe more than she would have ever dared to admit. But, she had these snarky lines and witty comebacks. She had these clever kind of plans to get ahead, like when she killed, is it Linwood, was that his name? She killed him at the start of this season as well to kind of take charge. Using, is it Gavin, I think, as well, wasn't it? Gavin. Yeah, it's like her little plaything ultimately. Fetch the tea, Gavin, if you will. And just seeing her kind of rise the ranks in that way professionally, and then it's almost like the opposite of that is almost happening while she's kind of so undoing personally, because she seems to be actually opening up to someone like Wesley a little bit. Obviously not a lot. She's still smart at heart, and she knew, what she was doing. But it's a different side to her to explore, and I'm glad, she's been around since like season 1, I think. A bit later on in season 1, I think she first appeared. So we'd had a lot of time with her, to see her go from like the rivalry she had with Lindsay to, making her way to the top, I guess, as time went on, and then the relationship with Wesley as well. She's just so much fun to watch, and such an interesting adversary in many ways. But it's the fact that sometimes their interests do align with Angel, as has often been the case with characters like Lindsay and some Wolfram and Hart lawyers. I think Billy last season was a big example of that as well. And with the Beast this season, the fact that they came along, like, killed everyone except for her and Wolfram and Hart. The fact that kind of led her to have to go on the run for a bit. Kind of wish she stayed on the run now, because she came back and was instantly killed. So yeah, I think it was a crying shame that she was kind of killed off as early in the season as she was. Well, it's about halfway through the season, I think, just over. So I think there's a lot of potential to her. Maybe there still will be, maybe, because she's not really... I mean, she is dead, but, they still used her in the finale and stuff. Maybe that's still a get-out clause, the fact that she's still under their contract, she still has to survive in a way, even if Wesley cut her head off. Maybe that is a way that she can still be around next season. I don't know if that's the case or not. Either way, I'm looking forward to finding out. But yeah, she's always just such a fun presence, and I've always really enjoyed the different dynamics she kind of has on display. There are a few layers to her that have been cracked over the years, like when she thought it was Angel in his body, and when it was actually that pervy old man who was kind of seducing her, and she was all systems go, like she was willing to let that happen. So there are moments of weakness like that with her that they kind of have highlighted over the past few seasons, culminating in, I think, this relationship with Wesley that she had, which was a really fun kind of dynamic, and they bounced off each other, I think, very well. Lila does have the potential, I think, with lots of characters to kind of, rub them the wrong way and have a lot of fun with it. And therefore we have a fun time watching it, because she's just enjoying being herself. she's completely confident in herself, which I think is why her and Wesley actually worked as well as it did, because I think Wesley is still very deeply insecure a lot of the time. Lila is kind of the opposite of that, and they, you know what they say about opposites they attract. You know what they say about opposites, they say nothing, because that's not a word. So yeah, I really enjoyed what Lila brought to the show. Potentially sad if that is it for her, because it did kind of seem like a finality to her arc with the whole Wesley trying to get her out of the contract, but there's nothing they could do about it thing. I almost actually just trapped in this loop forever, but maybe we don't see her. I'm not sure. Hopefully we do get more of her next season. I feel like there's some wiggle room for it. But we'll have to wait and see. Either way, Lila's a really fun presence that I enjoy having on the show. I think it's a shame that they killed her in her prime when she's just so much fun. It's just nice to have someone be evil and be a bit of a hassle and just enjoy it. She certainly did that to the best of her ability, and I think we loved her for it. So, you know, she feels like one of those characters that you could like sum up in a sentence, like, oh, this is what I was like, but there's still somehow more to her. You're like, oh wait, actually she is kind of a bit like this, and sometimes she's been a bit like this. Very much kind of a mystery in terms of that, I think, exactly how to unpack it. I feel like we never actually ever got to know her properly, and I feel like that's probably the point as well. Because there was, I think they mentioned like her mother or something at some point as well. I think her mother had dementia, something like that, I think. So there were kind of elements hinting at her life outside of Wolfram and Hart, but they may sadly never be truly touched on, which is a shame. But Lila is a really fun character to have around. The energy is a very unique energy I think she brought to the show. And it's kind of sad that they killed her, but there you go. What can you do? It made for a shocking twist, if nothing else. Unfortunately, it was all part of the Cordelia possession nonsense, but there you go. It is what it is. So yeah, Lila's great. Justine, I thought I'd mention her briefly. I thought she was going to have a much bigger role in this season than she ended up having. She was actually in the first episode, and I think we never saw her again. Wesley kind of held her hostage for a bit and then let her go or something. I mean, you know, Justine was a bit of a nothing character ultimately to me anyway. I genuinely don't think I could tell you what happened to her. I'll have to rewatch, you know, when I get to the point where I can rewatch Angel from the beginning. I guess I'll find out all over again, which is kind of exciting. But yeah, I felt, again, a lot of potential with her. I think someone was saying, I got a few comments about it was originally supposed to be Kate in that role, but they couldn't get the actress or something, so they just made up Justine. But yeah, I just felt there wasn't that much substance to her ultimately. But I thought I'd give her a bit of a shout out because she did play a bit of a role in the premiere. And again, the dynamic between her and Wesley was a bit more unique and interesting. So who knows what she could be up to. Maybe we'll see her again, for all we know. For all I know, she could be the big bad next season. That'd be quite something. But yeah, Justine was just kind of... She existed, you know. I suppose she kind of had an expiration date once Holtz was out of the picture. Maybe there wasn't much more they could do to progress her character there. Because maybe fighting is all some of us have left, or something she was saying, which is just a sign of a boring character, if you ask me. So yeah, she was just kind of there. But I thought I'd mention her anyway, because, you know, it was a bit of a holdover from last season. And again, like I mentioned earlier, I felt like they did kind of address the aftermath of what happened at the end of season 3, you know, in a somewhat decent way. And I feel like Justine's kind of part of that, because they did wrap up her story to an extent, from what I remember. So there we go. And then Gavin, I also thought I'd mention briefly. He wasn't around for a lot of the time, and, you know, when he got the most screen time, I think he was actually a zombie. So, you know, didn't have a lot to do this season. But again, a bit of a holdover from last season, I guess, with him and Lila kind of coming at odds. It was more so, I think, he was Lindsay 2.0 to kind of get in Lila's way. But poor Gavin, he didn't really stand a chance. I like the actor a lot, though. And yeah, it was a shocking moment, I think, actually, when Gavin was killed, but then everyone was killed. So once I realised what was going on there, I was like, well, sorry about it, Gavin. But he had a few moments of being a bit of a snake that I enjoyed, and I always enjoy the idea of, like, an adversary to an adversary, and I feel like he was very much of that for Lila. Normally Lila's kind of the one we're rooting against when it comes to like Team Angel and stuff. But he was also kind of against her. So to see a character like Lila kind of juggle a few different elements like Angel and Wesley and Gavin, it's actually a lot of fun. I like the idea when we have another character kind of interrupting and trying to be a villain against a character we already consider as a villain to our main characters. I think that's an interesting idea. Maybe something they could have explored more. I feel like there's a lot of potential with Gavin that just didn't get explored. But I did like the kind of facade he had of confidence, and then when Lila kind of took charge, he just kind of became her bitch a bit. But again, I just thought, because he had been around for a little bit, I thought I'd give him a bit of a mention in this. And I enjoyed what he kind of brought to the show in terms of a, more antagonistic thing with Lila, a bit of a nuisance for her. And he got a bit of a shocking end there, turning into a zombie. So there you go. Rest in peace, Gavin. Real one. And then Gwen is next, who I really enjoyed. I think she was in like 3 episodes overall. I don't know if I'll ever see her again. I kind of hope we do, because I thought she was really cool. I liked the idea. It felt like a different kind of thing for the Buffyverse to have like a person with powers. I mean, the whole point of her last appearance was to get rid of the powers. But maybe that thing that she used doesn't work, ultimately in the long run. Maybe, she wasn't sure if it would. But yeah, I really enjoyed the kind of idea behind her. The fact it kind of started off that episode, I think, like a lot of backstory for her, and then it kind of tied into exploring it a bit later on. The fact that she couldn't really touch anyone, and that created a very lonely life for her. So all she could really do was make the best of the situation and make money from it and steal things and hack things and stop Gunn's heart from working, and then restarting it. All of that jazz. So an interesting kind of morally complex person all over again. Players, you think she's just recruiting Gunn because she needs him in particular, but she's actually kind of using him. She has an agenda of her own. She's actually stealing that device for herself, and it's all kind of a ploy about breaking this girl out who's being held prisoner, just a means to an end. Lots of different layers and twists to her, and the fact that she kind of had like this penthouse kind of place, I think, with all things she kind of collected over her various jobs. There's a lot of intelligence to her, but the underlying tragedy, I think, of her childhood that she may never get over, but maybe she has a chance to now if her powers are gone for good. And I like that they kind of explored the fact that it was her choice to kind of get rid of those powers, because it was just a hindrance to her in her life and her enjoyment. She wanted to be touched, she wanted to live that intimate life, and the connection she kind of formed with Gunn across the Players episode, and ultimately they became intimate at the end, once the device worked and everything. Just opens up a whole new kind of like potential and a new life for her, a chance to kind of forget the past and start again if she so chooses. So she very much kind of was in control of her own destiny, which I liked. Again, a different kind of adversary when she first appeared, more so with the electric powers and stuff. So that was all very well and good. I liked the different kind of challenge she brought to the show when she was around. And I think the chemistry with her and Gunn was really there. It was electric, you might say. There was a spark between them. So yeah, she was a really interesting character, I thought. And again, I don't know if we will ever get more of her, but I kind of hope we do. I keep my fingers crossed. So I was kind of hoping for a time she'd actually join the team, because I think she would have been a really interesting member. But if this device and everything's worked for good, she can have her own life elsewhere now, and maybe that's just her story, which is fair enough. But, I think, considering she's only in a few episodes of the season, I do feel like she made a big impact, and she was actually one of my favourite new additions to the show character-wise this season, for sure. Yeah, she left a kind of a big impact, and it was a different kind of story for her that I did enjoy. And the fact that, she wasn't around that long, but she did get this kind of well-rounded arc, and ultimately means to an end for herself and finding this new way of living, kind of freeing herself from what she considered the burdens of her powers. Was quite something. And in comparison to Angel himself as well, who's very much burdened by his existence as a vampire. And he's had the choice to remove those before, like I will remember you, etc. And and he's still maybe fighting to become human or whatever, and the happiness or whatever. Angel still may never get that chance, and when he has had the chance before, he's chosen to kind of revert back to being a vampire for the greater good. Whereas Gwen kind of made that choice for herself to not be hindered by what she can do anymore and what she is. It's an interesting story, something that wouldn't be out of place in the X-Men. Maybe that's why I enjoyed her so much, because I like the X-Men. But still, I liked what she kind of brought to the table in terms of her character. I thought she was a lot of fun. I thought the actress was great. Particularly loved the dynamic with her and Gunn. And yeah, I just really liked the players as an episode. So I think that's also a big help. So Gwen was great. I don't know if we'll ever see her again, but I do think her appearances were a really fun addition to this season. Like I mentioned earlier, I think that a lot of the side characters this season were really, really good, and she's definitely the standout for me. Seidel, mentioned him briefly, more so just because of what he brought to Fred's story. If you choose to ignore what Jasmine and the powers and everything was saying, but it was all part of the grand scheme that Fred was kind of sent to Pylea, and everyone's destinies were actually not their destinies, they were out of their control. It was all orchestrated by Jasmine, blah, blah, blah. Which I don't choose to believe, because then it really undermines the whole Seidel thing, and the revelation that he sent all these people to Pylea that he felt threatened by. And I think he was more so a means to an end as a character, because he was just there to kind of explore, Fred's kind of trauma from being in Pylea, and a big obstacle for Fred and Gunn's relationship moving forward when Gunn chose to kill him. But still, he's kind of a classic slimeball villain that the episode had going for him. Not so much substance, but what he stood for I thought was an interesting idea. And if it gives Fred screen time, I'm going to be here for them, basically. And that certainly was the case with Seidel. So I thought I'd mention him just because he was kind of a big deal going forward. And while he was only in that one episode, it ultimately, it was the downfall of Fred and Gunn's relationship. So he certainly wasn't like the most memorable character that we had. He was definitely more so a plot device and a means to an end more than a character. But regardless, I thought he was a decent addition and provided some cool backstory for Fred. So I enjoyed that. And then we have the Beast, who is surprisingly quick to dispatch, ultimately. There was a lot of build-up, I felt, with the Beast. I liked the design of him. I thought it was really cool. And the physical imposing presence he had, and the physical threat he posed to the crew. He threw Connor out a window one time, I think, which was pretty cool of him. So in terms of that, I liked, and linking him to like Angelus, and like the fact that they had a history together was interesting and stuff. But more so, they kind of made him interesting through his links to other characters like Angel or Connor, as opposed to just being interesting in his own right. I felt maybe he was around a bit too long for the exit he kind of got. I get what they were going for, like bringing Angelus into it, and he like stabbed him in the back and killed him and everything. But I felt they really kind of milked the Beast, even though he was more so a physical threat than anything else, I feel like. But they just wanted to drag out the mystery, I guess, a bit longer with the whole Cordelia being the master thing. Not the master from Buffy, the master of the Beast. But yeah, there's a cool design to him nonetheless. But maybe not so much else that I particularly enjoyed from him. In fact, there were a few hints of intelligence to him, and again, I liked the backstory they were giving with him and Angelus, and that was the reason to bring Angelus back into the show, to learn how to stop him. Him just, completely ransacking and killing everyone in Wolfram and Hart was quite something, and I think they did a good job of kind of setting him up as a big threat. But it's a risk when you do that, and then you then just bring in another villain, and just to show how badass this new villain is. Well, new in terms of Angelus being new to this season. They easily dispatch this old villain, and sometimes that can work. I don't know if it necessarily worked for me with the Beast, but just because we were over halfway through the season at that point, the Beast had been bigged up quite a bit, and it's like, well, he's done now, because Angelus is here, the better villain's here. So maybe that kind of lessened the impact of him a bit, in a similar way to Mr. Trick in Buffy season 3. But still, I liked the design of him. Different kind of threat in terms of like the physically imposing side. And as a stand-in before we really got into the juicier stuff with Jasmine, etc., he was an okay stand-in. I just, they really made him out to be this all-powerful thing, like the most powerful thing they've ever faced, like this huge challenge, like really could not take him in any fight or anything. But I never quite bought into it as such as some other villains I think we've had in the show. And the fact that he was around for so long and then just so quickly dispatched, I don't know if that necessarily worked for how long he was around for. But regardless, I didn't dislike him, so that's better than nothing, right? So that was the Beast. Let's briefly talk about Willow, because we can. I love that she showed up to kind of help cast a spell again. It makes a lot of sense that they would call on her to help restore Angel's soul when all else seemed lost. All the badass witchy stuff, when she was battling Cordelia, being the badass cinnamon roll we all know her to be. It was just great to kind of get her back on the show and to see her interact with Fred. Gave me life. It sustained me. It's added decades to my life, I think, for sure. And just to see her interact with that crew a bit, and her and Wesley's discussion about the bad things that they've done, turning evil, giving Connor Holtz, all of that. How it became almost a bit of a competition was a lot of fun. And it's a shame that they had to catch up with Cordelia, but it wasn't actually Cordelia. It's kind of, again, just a wasted opportunity and potential that season 4 had. But it's just, we know I love me some Willow Rosenberg, and to see her pop up was always such a delight whenever it's happened in Angel before. So yeah, I just really enjoyed having her around and be all powerful witchy and stuff. And I think maybe what happened with that reinstalled a bit of the confidence that she needed when she went back to Buffy with Faith, and could then cast that big spell at the end of Buffy. So yeah, I enjoyed that very, very much, to have her back for an episode, and in such a big role as well. I think she had a cameo, I think, in Disharmony. Was she in it again? And then she had a cameo at the end of the season to tell Angel that Buffy was dead. But the fact that she had a big chunky role in an episode was fantastic, and I loved that very, very much. So having Willow show up, thank you, Jesus. And then in a similar note, Faith. My goodness, I love Faith. We also know this. And it's been such a long time since we've seen her in either show. To get her back, I mentioned this earlier as well, talk about the overall season, and I feel like these 3 episodes with her really got her ready and put her in this leadership position to then transition her back onto Buffy, where she needs to be a leader for a bit. I really loved that they did with her, because I think her arc in Buffy season 4, that 2-parter, put her in a really dark place and got her ready to go on Angel, which I feel like that Angel's the show really suited Faith's character, I think. And the 2 episodes she was on that for as well, the cameo at the start of season 2, and then back here for these 3, just that it kind of gets her ready to go back into Buffy as well. I feel like the way they used Faith's character worked really, really well for her. And I mentioned when I was talking about season 2, I thought it was a huge shame when they had her cameo in the first episode of season 2, that when Angel then went down his darker path later on that season, they didn't bring Faith back in to get him out of that slump and kind of help him out in the way he helped her the previous season. I always thought it was a bit of a shame, but they kind of did that a couple of seasons later with this, bringing her into it. I thought it made a lot of sense. And just to see her take Connor down a peg or 2 was great fun. To see her try and deal with the insecurities of, who she is now. Can she be forgiven for the things she's done even now? Is she a monster? Can she save Angel? Can she save her friend, the person that kind of helped save her? And she feels like she owes that to him. Everything with that, her interactions with the group. Just such an incredible character, and I'm so glad they brought her back into it for a little bit before they come back to Buffy. I don't know if we'll see her. I'd love her to show up again in Angel next season, to see her kind of see where the group's ended up now working at Wolfram and Hart would be quite something, considering, season 1, Wolfram and Hart kind of hired her and tried to get her to take Angel out. But I also feel like there's a lot of finality to this 3-episode arc that she had in this season. And I know a lot of people will agree that I think the Faith episodes in this season were some of the high points of this season overall. Certainly for me, I think that was like the big start of the final third of the season being really, really good, for me anyway. And yeah, just kind of exploring the dynamic that her and Angel can have and trying to save each other. When she had the Orpheus drug thing and everything, she kind of injected herself with that. So when Angelus kind of, started drinking from her, that kind of affected him too, and they had this shared dream. It's a really interesting idea. I wasn't that big on some of the execution of it in that episode, which I talked about in my reaction to Orpheus. There were a few things that I felt a bit off with, but overall, bringing Faith back into it at that point when Angel was Angelus again, seeing her and Wesley kind of be the Watcher and Slayer duo they were always meant to be and could have been way back when, now that they've both grown and changed so much, was so much fun, a real thrill. And I like it when they can showcase how far characters have come, and a character like Faith is just too good, I think, to kind of keep away for too long. So the fact they brought her back into it was so great. I love Eliza Dushku in the part. She's just so good. And yeah, definitely one of the highlights of season 4 for me was seeing Faith walk out of that jail and being like, oh my god, Faith's back. It's just been so long. Yeah, a welcome return. I loved what they kind of did with her, and kind of putting her in that leadership position to get her ready to be on Buffy again. Yeah, she's just such a cool character. I love how much she's kind of grown and changed as well since we first met her in Buffy. And yeah, some really great interactions with all the characters. So Faith is great. We know this. So I enjoyed her. And then Jasmine. Now, I love Gina Torres, obviously. I've mentioned this many times. She's fantastic. I loved her in this role. The kind of delicate nature that she portrayed Jasmine with. But you can almost see it in her eyes, in like the performance. Behind her eyes, there's just so much like evilness and sadistic nature there. Like true darkness that I really did love. And yeah, I actually thought Jasmine, was a very different kind of villain for Angel to face. I don't think she could have carried like the entire season. I probably could have had her around for a bit longer, but I also feel like that was kind of well judged for how long she was around for ultimately. Because maybe there's only so far. When she kind of influences everyone in a very similar way, they're all just enamored with her. You can't really explore that concept that much, I guess, because there aren't exactly that many different ways to be enamored with her, because it all seemed pretty much identical, apart from the people who kind of broke out and saw through her, like Sam Witwer and Fred, for example. So yeah, the kind of threat she posed, kind of an exact opposite for the most part to the Beast, so I kind of like them flipping that. She didn't get too physically involved in things or anything. She often got people to fight her battles for her until she had no choice but to fight for herself, when everyone kind of saw through her at the end, when Angel kind of exposed her. And yeah, just the idea that she has this divine kind of influence over everyone, this big plan to kind of give birth to herself, the fact that she was a power that was, I guess, and she truly believed that she was doing good and she was going to save the world by doing what she did, kind of bringing peace through taking away free will. The kind of twisted sense of that. To an extent, you can kind of understand where she was trying to come from with that, but you can also understand that it's wrong and she needed to be stopped. And the fact that she was eating people also wasn't brilliant. But yeah, I liked the concept behind that character a hell of a lot. I do feel like ultimately she was kind of worth that build-up to her arrival in a way that maybe some villains often weren't, or some villains were like discarded very easily, like I felt the Beast was after all that build-up. I feel like Connor just punching her through the face was kind of a huge thing, especially when he was like, oh, I still love you, and then he just kills her. after she kind of lost everything. That was really cool. And like the makeup job and like what she actually looked like, gross. Everything with that, I thought it was a really cool idea for kind of a end of season villain, who I don't think overstayed her welcome. Even a lot of the build up was to her kind of being born, and I guess Jasmine was around for a long time because she was kind of possessing Cordelia, I guess. So yeah, I did like that a hell of a lot as a villain. Thought it was very different to what had come before. And I guess because it got so personal with Holt and everything last season, I think it did kind of make sense that we kind of just go a bit broader and grander scale with the villain, kind of really do the exact opposite. So have like a former power that be come along and try and save the world in a very twisted version. So yeah, I really like the idea behind Jasmine, what her plan was, the way she could be defeated by like her own blood and stuff, couldn't help you see through her. That was a lot of fun. It also then provided some cool stuff for Connor, and finally actually gave him some good development about like believing Jasmine's lie over another one. And yeah, again, while she was like this broad villain stuff, she still kind of made it personal in the way because it was like Cordelia and Connor's baby. And it ties into like a big theme, I think, of family and the father and the child that this season kind of had going for it as well. So yeah, she was a really interesting addition to the kind of final part of the season. And yeah, Gina Torres is wonderful, so I'm never going to say no to having her appear in any TV show. Cast her in everything. So yeah, I really liked Jasmine actually. She was definitely, of all the villains we've had, who have we really had? Like, we've had like Wolfram and Hart and stuff. And, Holt's the big deal. Darla. I do feel like Jasmine's up there in terms of like angel big bads for me. I did really like how different she felt, so I liked her a lot. And then yeah, speaking of Darla, I thought I mentioned her very briefly because we technically saw her in like a vision that Connor had. I thought more so, you know, I liked the idea of her being like the angel on Connor's shoulder, whereas Cordelia was the devil, just representing everything that she kind of died for, and the fact that she still seems to be full of love for Connor in that vision, even though, you know, you think because she, you know, staked herself and doesn't have Connor inside her anymore to like give her a soul or make her feel like she has a soul, you think she'd just be the Darla that was, but they still kind of showcased the mother's love for her son, which I really liked, especially because they then kind of flipped it with Jasmine and Connor, and it was kind of all about the daughter's love for her father in her final moments there before Connor punched her face in. So it was cool to see her, because it was kind of a shame, you know, the fact that Della had to die for Connor to be born meant that they could never really interact. So the fact that we kind of got it in a different kind of way, even if ultimately I feel like it didn't hold much weight by the end because Connor just completely ignored Darla's visions, and I feel like that should have been a big breakthrough moment for him. But because the plot required Connor to still be on Jasmine's side, he was just like, no, I'm not going to listen to you. I mean, that's how I felt anyway. I thought it was a bit of like, oh, okay, that's a bit of a shame. But still, it was cool to see her pop up, to see them reprise the role in a different kind of Darla than we'd seen before as well. Yeah, it was nice to kind of at least get a Connor and Darla interaction, even if it was like an untraditional kind of one. So I liked that a lot. And then Skip, I thought we'd mention briefly. I talked about him a bit earlier as well. I love the kind of really darker turn that they gave him in the revelations that he was kind of not a particularly nice demon, shockingly. And the kind of threat he then posed, you know, explaining why all this was happening to Angel Investigations, all about their destiny and everything, what Jasmine was kind of planning. He was kind of worshipping her and everything. It was a really interesting turn for a character who had at times been a bit more lighthearted and fun. I thought that was a character turn that was actually really effective, not like a, what the hell are you doing that for? That seems a bit weird. Because we were still so unsure about Skip, and because he had all these abilities we didn't really understand, I think it made sense that, you know, we didn't really know him at all. And the whole process with Cordelia ascending and everything was so dodgy in the first place. It's not a huge surprise that he himself was dodgy. But yeah, I like the heel turn with his character and the fact that he was actually really quite nasty. Now he's really quite dead, so there you go. But yeah, I enjoyed him as well, so I thought I'd give him a bit of a shout out. Along with the spider demon guy near the end of the season. I mean, when Angel walked out and there's loads of them, obviously. A very cool design, but more so the one that was in the sewers in episode 20 or whatever it was, that kidnapped Wesley and stuff. I thought the actor was fantastic in that role. Very creepy kind of characterizations and mannerisms that he had, and just one of many great demon designs that we've gotten this season. I think there's one quite early on. It had like a peeled open mouth or something. I think that was very early on in the season. I thought that was a really cool design as well. But yeah, the spider ones, I think I'm not a big fan of spiders basically, so they really stuck with me, and they like the sound effect of them like running about and like how their movement was choreographed and stuff. Just a really well realized demon, portrayed superbly well by the actor as well. Very kind of memorable foe out of a lot of cool demons this season and throughout all seasons of the show. Quite a few demons and villains in the Buffyverse do stick out. Like the Gentleman, obviously, the Kinder Egg stands out a lot to me. And this one also stuck with me. This spidery guy. I don't know if they have like an official name. I'd have to look it up. But I hope you know which ones I'm talking about. But I just thought I'd shout them out as well because I thought they were another cool, creepy performance and villain for an episode or two. So I like them, the kind of worshippers of Jasmine. They could provide some backstory for Jasmine, the fact that they worshipped her and everything. And they were like the first ones to worship her, and they were angry that everyone else in the world was now starting to like worship her because they're like, oh, we were here first. I kind of like that pettiness. I thought that was a different kind of thing that they did with them as well. So I enjoyed that very much. And then I guess the last little character to note is like the Wolfram and Hart employees. I kind of just put a general thing. More so in the finale, we met a few different ones that I assume we're going to see a bit more of next season. Maybe like the other like former Watcher that Wesley knocked out and stole things from. I don't know if he's going to just be like a permanent thing. Maybe Angel just gets rid of them all and fires them all now because he's in charge. But the guy who showed Fred around, the scientisty guy. The woman who showed Gunn around that he was kind of enamored with. I don't know if they're going to be sticking around, but I thought they were kind of interesting additions to the finale anyway, to kind of showcase the different parts and units, I guess, the cogs of this new Wolfram and Hart that could be more so, potentially just to set up next season and what they can achieve. But, Wolfram and Hart has had some pretty cool characters in the past, like Lindsay, Lila. So maybe some of those guys could be really interesting going forward as well, if they choose to kind of bring them back and explore those individuals in the next season. We'll have to wait and see. But, Wolfram and Hart have been in the show since the pilot. We got rid of them for a time, obviously, when the Beast killed them all. So to bring them back, and the fact that they're behind the surface, they're kind of like Hydra, I guess. You can never really get rid of them. They're kind of rebuilding themselves up, and then they offered themselves that branch up to Angel and his crew because they ended world peace, which is another cool way of reintroducing Wolfram and Hart and twisting it on Angel, being like, ha, you ended world peace, you're actually bad people. It's just could be very interesting to see where that all goes in the next season. So yeah, Wolfram and Hart does feel like a character of its own at this point. It's been such a huge part of the show. You can't really imagine Angel without a couple of sneaky, dodgy lawyers in the background somewhere doing something. So the fact that I think they're going to be a huge part of season 5 is actually very exciting to me. So I'm looking forward to seeing where they're going to go with that. And yeah, those were just some of the kind of recurring supporting characters that season 4 had going. And like I mentioned earlier, I do think the supporting characters in this season, maybe it's one of the strongest selections of secondary characters that a season's had. They just really stood out to me when I was kind of coming together, putting some notes down, writing out some characters I want to talk about. It's like, there's some really great supporting characters here. And along with, an always excellent main cast, regardless of the material they were given. There was some really wonderful performances from main cast members and the guest cast this season. So shout out to them because, what would Angel be without a lot of its characters, you know? So I thought those would be some good ones to kind of highlight and talk about for God knows how long. Okay, so next we're going to talk about some of the themes that I picked up on during my watch of the episodes, and recently when I've been compiling the notes for this review, I've kind of gone back through some of the episodes, some of my previous notes to kind of see what any other connections I can make. So again, these are just kind of stuff that I interpreted from it. These probably aren't every single theme that is on display in season 4. This is just the ones that I kind of lent more so towards, and then I've just a couple of examples for each one as well to demonstrate the points. And again, not every single example of every single theme, because that would probably take a very long time. But yeah, I've got a decent amount, I think. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10, I think. And yeah, I think there's a bit of overlap between some of them, because I think the story itself and what they're going for with it, I think, is kind of cohesive. It's just that the execution of that was at times, but I think we've already kind of discussed that. So I think one key theme is the idea of manipulation. A big example, of course, is Connor. The manipulation that Holtz kind of put him through in the last season continued on here. And through that, he was then manipulated by Jasmine later on in the season, by Cordelia as well. Everything with that. And the idea that maybe did the powers that be manipulate all of their lives to kind of have all these big events happen to get it to this moment. Was it all part of that big grand plan of Jasmine's and the powers that be, etc.? That kind of running theme through it. Angel's dream and awakening to kind of manipulate him into losing his soul, kind of manipulate his happiness. Lots of stuff with that. Angel manipulating time at the end of the season to kind of manipulate people's memories of Connor to get rid of it and give him a better life for himself. All of that stuff I think was one. Then I think a big one is the idea of free will and how far you can let yourself go, how far you can push yourself. Jasmine very much took away everyone's free will with her whole deal at the end of the season, kind of forcing everyone to not care about things and just worship her and think she's the absolute best, think that she's the GOAT, if you will. So that idea, and it kind of can tie into manipulation in a sense, because Cordelia's free will was taken away as well when Jasmine kind of took over her body. Angel's free will, of his own free will, he had his soul taken out, but that he then lost that as Angelus, and it was a bit of a struggle to return the soul, so we needed to call on Willow to do it. So that's kind of a big deal as well. And I think it's a big debate, the idea of consent and free will this season in terms of the abuse of a lot of bodies, Connor's, Cordelia's, all of that. So that's kind of a thing. Nature versus nurture, I think, is also a big deal. There's, again, an extent of that with Connor last season. The fact that he was raised by Holtz as opposed to Angel. How different would he have turned out if he got to be raised by his father? So there's that. And Connor's new life now. He's actually been nurtured in a different home. And he seems to have turned out, much better and a much healthier person mentally. So maybe is that more so like the argument for being nurtured, stuff like that. Jasmine giving birth to herself, kind of nurturing herself. Cordelia nurturing Jasmine. Angel and Angelus, that's always going to be a thing, isn't it? Which one is Angel's true nature? Is it Angel, is it Angelus? And the powers that be, kind of shaping events, nurturing different events, kind of disobeying the laws of nature potentially if what they were all saying about what they were doing behind the scenes was true. And Faith, I guess, to an extent as well. She's kind of nurtured herself during her time in prison. A lot of the stuff that happened that went wrong in Buffy season 3, it was kind of a natural gut reaction when she killed Alan and stuff. I think she's kind of unlearning all that, and maybe she is becoming, a more nurtured person emotionally and mentally. And that kind of ties into my next theme, I guess, the idea of like your true self, who you really are. Is it a facade, who you really are? Is there some insecurities there? Wesley, Lila very much seems to be her authentic true self, openly and honestly, unapologetically. Connor in his new life at the end, is that who Connor is truly meant to be? Is that his true self? Is it not, because he wasn't, that's not the original way his life went, so is that not his true self? Is the Connor that should have been raised by Angel the true self, and we never really got to meet them? It's kind of an idea as well. The Angel Angelus debate, I think, could kind of lean into that. And then the kind of reveals with Cordelia not really being Cordelia, and her true self was actually Jasmine for a lot of the arc. And then Jasmine's true nature as well. Her true self was actually all maggoty face, but not everyone could see that for a time, so she had to be exposed and everything. All of that. Gunn as well, I guess. Is he just the muscle? Is there more to him that isn't being explored? Is Wolfram Hart going to bring the true self out of everyone who's kind of working there now? We shall have to wait and see. Then another theme, the idea of family, and maybe more so specifically like a parent and their child. We have Angel and Connor, we have Connor and Jasmine, Cordelia and Jasmine, Jasmine and herself in a twisted sense. That whole kind of messy love triangle-y thing going on. And a big driving force of Angel's arc this season, obviously, is his relationship with his son, trying to repair that. Maybe having to make the ultimate sacrifice at the end of the season to repair it. Not that Connor can know that Angel did do that to, save his soul, I guess. And then Jasmine's influence on the world kind of made them all feel like this group, this family. Jasmine's kind of saying, "Oh, you're all my family, you're all my friends. We're all united together." That kind of cohesive idea that family kind of represents with her. So yeah, again, coming back to like the prophecy that was kind of fulfilled at the end of the season. Like the father will kill the son. It was originally a false prophecy, but then I think it kind of, in a twisted sense, did come true at the end of the season, which was really cool. I liked how that kind of ended up coming true. I thought that was really clever. And another one, the idea of like a new life or a new existence, kind of finding that for yourself. Wolfram and Hart kind of being completely gutted and killed off, and now Angel and co have the potential new life running that, and what could that lead them to? We'll have to wait and see next season. Angel's vision for what his life could have been like at the start of the season when he was hallucinating, and the visions he was having as Angelus as well, the one that kind of reawakened Angelus, that could have been like his new life, his perfect life as well. Again, Connor's ultimate fate at the end of the season kind of can go into that. The new kind of life that everyone had when Jasmine came along, she was kind of influencing all of them, changing their lives for the better. Cordelia brought new life into the world in a way, Jasmine herself also, through actually giving birth. Gwen kind of found a new way of life for herself by seemingly getting rid of her powers and allowing people to touch her. That's going to give her a whole new existence that she can navigate as well. Then another big one is the idea of home and belonging somewhere. I mean, the finale of this season was called Home, so that's a pretty big indicator. Again, Connor is a big example of that, not really fitting in anywhere, and then he finally finds a home for himself at the very end of the season. It took all that time, bless him. And it is funny, like when I was coming out with all these themes, Connor is a big example in all of them. So it's crazy, like such a big role that Connor does play in this season. And yet I think there's still kind of some faults in the execution of his character. So it is a big deal. And I think that's kind of why a lot of people may not be so keen on this season. Connor is such a huge part of it. And if people don't like Connor, and they have a reason not to, that's such a big chunk of the the heart of what I kind of interpret the season to be going for. So yeah, Faith as well, kind of finding a place to belong. She currently belongs in Sunnydale by the end of Orpheus, because that's where she's needed to fight the fight against the First. Or does she just still belong in prison? Is that where she needs to be to kind of make up for everything she did? And then Jasmine, she was like an outcast for the powers that be for a time. And she kind of found a new home on Earth. She's kind of fighting to be brought back to Earth to save it. She felt like she belonged there. It was her destiny. She made everyone else feel like they belonged to her and belonged to that world. Didn't work out for her, obviously. And yeah, just the idea of them like worshipping Jasmine. They kind of felt like she was their home until they saw the horrible, horrible maggoty truth face. And then Fred and Gunn, I kind of put as well loosely, they belonged to each other for a time. They kind of found each other and they found a home in each other. And that kind of fell apart by the end of the season. Then another theme is like magic and the influence of magic, the pros and cons of it, I guess. Connor talked a lot about, his disapproval of magic and thinking it was kind of stupid and dangerous and pointless. So we had that going on. Jasmine's influence over everyone, just naturally, and having to break that spell. Willow coming in, casting the spell. That was a more positive use of magic, was to restore Angel's soul and sort out that whole mess. And Lorne's spell that he was casting to try and get Cordelia's memories back was a big part of why it all went wrong and why Jasmine could take over Cordelia in the first place. So that was kind of a big deal. And that kind of influence of magic kind of carried through the entire season, because the effects of that spell led to everything that happening, I guess. Then the destiny is another big theme, I think, in this one. The idea that, in a way, the father will call the son prophecy came true. There's still the Shanshu prophecy out there, but I don't think that was specifically referenced that much this season. The powers that be and what they may have potentially done, even though I don't really buy into that, to kind of orchestrate all these events, like Gunn's sister dying, Fred going to Pylia, Connor being born, all of that jazz, Cordelia ascending, how everyone's fates that led them to where they currently are. Was that all just the work of the powers that be? Was that not even their own destiny? Can they forge their own destiny now that they're in control of Wolfram and Hart and that Jasmine's gone and everything? It's going to be a thing to kind of decide. Especially interesting, I think, given how Buffy ended off this season. Like, everyone kind of took their own fates and their own destinies into their own hands by the finale. So it's interesting that potentially the Angel Investigations crew are in the position to do the same now, just as Buffy and all the potential Slayers were at the end of season 7 of Buffy. So that was kind of a cool link between those two. And yeah, just Connor's birth. Jasmine felt it was her destiny to kind of save the world and save all these other worlds through her own twisted means. And then I think this is the last one. The idea of the head versus the heart, deciding what you need to do versus what you want to do. So Angel and Cordelia is a big part of that. It was very much more so him following his heart when he tried to get Cordelia back at the start of the season. That led to all this trouble as well, even though Cordelia had chosen to ascend and everything. That seems to be her destiny. It didn't quite work out. And then, the battle of his head and his heart when he considered having to kill Cordelia just before Jasmine was born to kind of try and prevent it. He had to kill, is he going to need to kill the woman he loves? Connor, very much so, I think, as well, was often conflicted by his head versus his heart. Because I think sometimes he kind of knew there was something dodgy going on with Cordelia, like when he had to kill that virgin to speed along the birth. There was a few moments there he was really doubting that. I imagine it couldn't have been easy for him to work the decision to kill Jasmine at the end, because it was technically his daughter, but I think his head kind of won through the day there, as he caved her skull in to kind of save the day. Fred and Gunn, kind of more so an impulsive action on Gunn's part to like kill the professor, maybe an act of the heart. Did he really think through long term what that could do to their relationship? I'm not sure. It's very impulsive, and the deterioration of that relationship because of it. Was it like a smart move for them to stay together or drift apart, etc.? Wesley and Lila, it probably wasn't a good idea for those two to do what they did, but they went for it anyway. And I think there ultimately was a lot of heart in that relationship because of like Wesley's actions to try and give Lila some sort of peace in the finale. And Lila obviously having some kind of affection for Wesley, no matter how much she may deny it. And then Connor and his vision of Darla, like I mentioned earlier, kind of like Darla being the angel on his shoulder, Cordelia being the devil, head versus heart. Very much I think that's the most kind of physical interpretation and example that this season kind of went for in terms of like weighing up that decision. It was very much so on screen, head versus heart. I mean, one was literally dressed in all black, one was dressed in all white, about as subtle as an enema. But still, it counts with that theme. And the Wolfram and Hart offer at the end of the season in the finale, I think there's a lot to weigh up with that, what that choice could mean. I think, your gut and your heart would tell you, like, you can't trust these people. Like, there must be some other plan here, and maybe it's a trap. We can't accept this. But when you're really thinking about it, maybe we could do some good with this and this new kind of opportunity that we've got going for us. If we take this on and take over this branch, we could do some good with it. So yeah, those are just a few examples of some of the themes I picked out with season 4. I think it has a lot going for it in terms of themes. I think there's some really interesting ideas there. And again, like the idea of isolation and stuff with Connor, I considered putting down, but it was like the last few episodes of the season where they really delved into that. It's just a shame that some interesting themes like that they didn't quite follow through with or explore as much as they probably should have done. But there was some cool stuff I think going on in there. I'm sure there's plenty of other stuff that I've entirely missed, haven't even considered even, that I'd be interested in hearing some of your thoughts on that you kind of picked up on. And I'm looking forward to kind of seeing like how each of the themes in every season of all these shows kind of change and progress, how much stays the same. Because of course redemption's a big theme in Angel, and I think I've included it in basically all my previous reviews. I left it out of this one just because it's kind of a given at this point. You can talk about Angel and Angelus redeeming himself for that. Faith is also trying to redeem herself for her past actions. Kind of, two minds about breaking out of prison and everything. But when she heard that Angel was Angelus again, she kind of went for it. All of that jazz. So yeah, it's kind of packed with themes really, and there's a lot of good content in terms of that in season 4, and that's why I can't see it as like a complete write-off, and there's still I think a lot to enjoy, because I could still pick up on a lot of different stuff that they could be kind of talking about, and I'm sure there's plenty of other stuff I actually mentioned in individual episodes in those reactions that I haven't thought of here or maybe forgot about, because it's it's tough to remember every single thing I said about 22 different episodes of television over the past few months of reacting to them. So yeah, there's some cool stuff in there, and like I also mentioned, Connor was kind of a big example that I found for a lot of these themes. And if you're not a big fan of Connor, I know damn well sure a lot of people aren't, I think I like Connor a lot more than most, but he does have his moments where I'm like, oh my god, just go away. But if you don't like him, that's going to take so much of enjoyment, I think, out of this season for you. So again, I can see why some people aren't a big fan of it overall. But yeah, those are basically a lot of the key themes that I kind of had to say about this season. Okay, folks, we're getting there. We're getting through it. I don't know how long it's been, because I'm kind of recording each section individually, so I guess we'll see how long I've been rambling for at this point. But we come to my favourite part of these reviews, and we kind of compare and contrast your favourite episodes versus mine. So yes, thank you to everyone who kind of commented on my post in my community tab, asking for your top 3 favourite episodes of this season. We had about 120 or so comments, which is really great. So thank you everyone for your inclusion. I did kind of have to wait to film this review because I sat down, I was like starting writing my notes, and I was like, okay, maybe I can film the first few bits. And I was like, I've forgotten to get everyone's votes for their favourite episodes, so I'm going to have to wait for a bit and give them a few days once I post the thing. So yeah, this is a bit later and I intended this review to come out because of that, because I'm an idiot. But yes, we managed to get some very interesting results, actually. Because I think it shows kind of, I guess, how divisive the episode is. There were some clear winners and some clear favourite episodes in general. But there's only actually one episode that didn't get any votes at all, which is kind of crazy. So there's only one episode out of the entire season that isn't, from the people who responded, was no one's favourite. And that's kind of insane. And that just shows like how many people have different favourites, and how kind of mixed, I guess, the season is for all these different people. And again, this comes from everyone who kind of posted a comment on the thing in the community tab. If I asked for 3, and I need to kind of stick to that rule, because otherwise it's just not fair. If people are only like, I've only got one favourite, or here's 4, I can't pick between these couple, I just can't include those, as I mentioned in the post, because then that's one extra episode getting an additional vote, whereas others were only getting 3 episodes each. So it just, to keep it fair, I only counted the comments that did give me 3 episodes. So, that makes it kind of a more fair and more accurate kind of representation for this, which is still a damn good amount of votes. So thank you to everyone who kind of sent them in, and for your interesting discussions, sometimes aggressive discussions of the episodes in those posts. But it's very appreciated and very interesting to kind of see what you've all been kind of saying are your favourites of this season. I mean, it certainly does seem to be contained to the second half more so than anything else, with the exception of one in like the first half of the season. But I do think the second half of the season is infinitely stronger anyway. The last third, I think, of season 4 is genuinely really, really good. Cordelia, Erasure aside. So yeah, it ultimately kind of narrowed it down to kind of 14 kind of slots out of the 22 episodes. I know some people don't like the way I kind of do like joint first, joint second stuff, because technically I should be like, if there were 2 in 5th place, then it should be after that 3rd, but I still just go 4th place. But that's just how I do it, and you still get the idea of which episodes are the best, according to you guys anyway. So yeah, 14th place, dead last, with 0 votes. The only episode to get 0 votes is Sacrifice, episode 20. So yeah, I think they're just maybe some stronger episodes in that arc. And I think because there are such clear favourites, it would seem, with this season, there are a couple of individual episodes that are, really, really, really good, in a season that may be seen as somewhat more average. More people are obviously just going to vote for the 3 popular ones, and maybe the others are going to be left in the lurch a bit, which seems to be the case with one of my top 5, actually, which is very, very low on this list for you guys. But yeah, joint 13th, with 1 vote each, was Slouching Toward Bethlehem, Long Day's Journey, Inside Out, and Peace Out. So that's those. Joint 12th, with 2 votes, Supersymmetry, Players, and Shiny Happy People. I saw like one person who voted for Shiny Happy People, like shout out to you, because you were like, I'm not seeing any love for this, I want to vote for it, because I quite enjoyed that episode as well. And then 11th place, or joint 11th, with 3 votes each, is Ground State and Habeas Corpses. Then joint 10th with 4 votes is The House Always Wins and Apocalypse Nowish. And then 9th with 6 votes was Calvary, or Calvary. I always thought it was Cavalry, but that's spelled differently, isn't it? So I think that's a different word altogether. Calvary. There you go. And then I think that's the one just before the Faith arc kicking off, isn't it? And then 8th place with 7 votes is the premiere, Deep Down, which I don't know. It was weird actually kind of looking back, because I didn't know which ones I really expected to do well, with the exception of Orpheus, because I was like, well, people really liked that episode, I think. I didn't really know any others, but Deep Down actually did a lot better than I thought it might. But there you go. And then joint 7th with 8 votes each is Release and The Magic Bullet. 6th with 10 votes is Awakening. 5th with 16 votes is Solace. And then we have some big gaps here in the top 4. So 4th with 29 votes was Salvage. Third place with 39 votes was Home, the finale, and then another big jump here. Second place with 54 votes. I think this was the biggest gap in terms of votes between any kind of entries in the list. So second is Spin the Bottle, 54 votes. And surprising probably no one, first place with 66 votes is Orpheus. I assume, because of Fred and Willow, it's only right, I think. So yeah, when I was kind of going through it, I was like, well, I think I can guess the top three from how this is going, because it was like Orpheus, Spin the Bottle, Home. A lot of those were kind of getting a lot of love. And yeah, I think that's kind of fair. A lot of people were saying the Faith arc is their kind of favourite part of the season. For some people, that's the only episodes in the season they like. And a lot of people were like, well, there's only 3 episodes I like in the season anyway, so there you go. Which kind of seems bizarre to me. So I think like a lot of the episodes are solid. And again, I don't think there's like an episode in season 4 that was like, that is a bad episode. But again, each to their own. That's the fun of doing this kind of comparison, I think. So that's how you guys all voted. Thank you very much to everyone who did leave your episodes there. Orpheus with a landslide there. I mean, it was sort of close with Spin the Bottle. But yeah, I kind of knew about halfway through, kind of marking all the votes down, like, yeah, I think Orpheus has this in the bag. But yeah, I was surprised at how badly some episodes did, considering my list. But some of them did really well as well. I think Deep Down did a lot better than I would have expected. Apocalypse Nowish got 4 votes, and that's kind of got the infamous scene of the season in it. So yeah, definitely a good reflection, I think, of how divisive and how diverse opinions are of it that season 4 actually has. So yeah, those are your favourite episodes, and now we move on to my top 5. Okay, so now we're going to get into my top 5 episodes of season 4. And before I inevitably get some comments about it, it does say 5B at the bottom there, not 58. It's not like a typo or anything, because the first part of this was 5A. It's just the font makes it look like it says 58, but it is a B. And I've already recorded most of this review using that font, so I'm not going to change it now. So just in case. But yeah, my top 5, I actually found it quite difficult to whittle it down. Because there was one that's like, oh, I really remember liking that one. I knew straight away one of them, because I remember coming off that episode being like, oh, that was really, really good. Oh my god, yes. And that then ended up doing really badly in the poll with the viewers. So I was like, oh, well, that's going to be controversial, maybe. So yeah, we had that. And, I think overall we're in kind of agreement with a lot of the best episodes this season, certainly like top 5 anyway. So yeah, I kind of had to go back, watch some of my reactions to get my general thoughts on them. But a lot of them are like, yeah, it's another good episode. So I was like, well, that doesn't really stick out to me as like, must be in my top 5 then. So that helped me narrow it down a bit more. So yes, these are my top 5 episodes. Well, we'll start with my honourable mentions first. Because Players very, very nearly made the list, because I really did enjoy that episode. I like the focus on Gun, and I kind of want to do a bit of range and diversity in my top 5, not just maybe necessarily go for all the obvious ones, even though they're still valid and I still really enjoyed them. Although some of them I don't think I enjoyed as much as the general consensus from you guys. But Players was a lot of fun. I really liked that episode. I remember having a lot of fun recording that reaction. So that very nearly made the top 5. And Release as well, because the whole Faith arc, the build up to that and everything was all good fun. That kind of, those 4 or 5 episodes at that point in the season I thought were really strong. So that very nearly made it as well. So yes, where shall we begin with my top 5? I mean, I guess 5, because I don't have any more honourable mentions. I thought I did, but I didn't. So yeah, top 5. At number 5, it's Spin the Bottle. I thought this was just a really fun episode. It allowed people to have, some more comedic moments with their characters, do different things, go back to seeing maybe a bit of Wesley, how he used to be, a bit of the older version of Fred as well. Everything with that I thought was done really well, and the panic of Angel like realizing he's a vampire and everyone like trying to hunt him down and everything. Then it was like the Angel version of Tabula Rasa that I really, really enjoyed. And it was good just before, looking back where the season goes from then on, and it gets kind of dark and twisty and frustrating. It was nice to kind of have a really fun episode like that, even if it was the episode that kind of caused the whole Jasmine thing to be able to take hold of Cordelia, and it all went wrong from there. Just a really funny episode. Allows the characters and the actors themselves to have a bit of a laugh, just see them in a different kind of way that you normally would, and I imagine that's a lot of fun for the actors to do. And because they're clearly having fun with it, I had fun watching it as well. And you guys, it's your second favourite overall, so kind of in agreement there that it's a really fun, great episode. So that's number 5. Number 4 is actually Orpheus, which was your guys' number 1 by quite a way, with 66 votes. I love that we have Willow and Fred interacting in it. I love that. I love the kind of conclusion, like the Faith arc and her going back to Sunnydale and everything, Angel's soul being restored, the end of the Angela stuff. I don't think I enjoy it as much as the general consensus seems to. I thought it was good, but if you remember my reaction, I did have quite a few problems with some of the characterization, some of the execution of it. I thought, maybe they could have done this, and that would have made it a bit more effective and stuff. So I have quite a few issues with that episode overall, even though I still really enjoyed it, evidently, because it's in my top 5. But, I wouldn't consider it, really my favourite episode of the season, for sure. There was definitely a lot more that I came away from being like, oh yeah, that was really, really good. Maybe I just overhyped it in my head because of the potential for Willow and Faith interacting, although I didn't actually know when that was going to happen then, because I think I had an episode after I'd seen the Buffy episode about the phone call. So I was like, maybe that's just going to be an off-screen thing, or maybe it's not going to happen or anything. So I guess it's not really that. And I did get a lot of messages being like, you need to watch Angel now, you need to watch the next episode of Angel. So I was like, okay. And people are clearly excited for this one. It's just a classic case of overhype, maybe. But yeah, I did have a few kind of problems with the episode overall, but it's in my top 5, so it's still bloody good. And yeah, it was always going to make the top 5 just for Willow and Faith interacting. Well, they did interact, but Willow and Fred interacting alone because they were adorable. I kind of really ship it. So yeah, I love that. That was my death. And again, this episode kind of added decades to my lifespan, which I appreciate. And it has some great stuff with Faith in it. I like the wrapping up of the Angelus arc. I like the Willow versus Cordelia battle, everything with that. Some really funny moments in it. And yeah, the Wesley and Willow conversation was a lot of fun. Just some really good character moments in there. Even if, for me personally, I wasn't quite as enthralled in it as a lot of you guys probably were, to put it higher on the list, but still really, really good. And then number 3 on my list is Home, the finale. And again, actually, we agreed on this. It was 3rd place for you guys as well, which I've only just realised. But yeah, I liked how it kind of felt like an epilogue to the season as opposed to just a finale, in a similar way to like Restless was with Buffy season 4. We kind of already dealt with Jasmine and got rid of her in the previous episode. This was kind of the aftermath of that. The Wolfram and Hart offer, kind of showing everyone around, what could be, and potentially setting up some really cool stuff for season 5. I loved everything with that. The Wesley and Lila kind of subplot was really nice. And after I was so enamoured with what Connor's character could have been in episode 21 with his whole speech and everything, one of my favourite moments of the season, the fact that they then kind of followed through with that to an extent and gave Connor a really nice ending after a really rough season for the poor guy. I loved it. A really emotional ending. I think there may have been a couple of times I've cried during season 4. I don't remember crying that much during the season. But that ending of season 4, that got me good at the end of this episode with Connor and his new family and everything, what Angel had to give up to give Connor that life. Loved it. Beautiful way of ending the season. Some really interesting, cool setup, I think, for season 5 that I'm very much looking forward to getting into. And yeah, I think every character kind of had a nice moment to shine in it. Seeing Lila come back was good fun. And yeah, just the ending of Connor's story, potentially, the end of his arc, at least his season 4 arc for sure. There's a really beautiful kind of send-off, and I think, earned and deserved after a very stressful season for everyone involved. So I loved the finale a hell of a lot. And then number 2 on the list, just missing out on the top spot, is Salvage. I mean, I was hyped as fuck after I watched this episode. I'm absolutely buzzing in my afterthoughts. If you go back and watch that, I was like, this one and number 1, I was kind of like my big afterthoughts. I was like, ooh, that was so good. So I was like, well, those 2 are definitely my top 5. And yeah, the reintroduction of Faith, her interactions with Wesley and everything, so good. And everything with the Angelus kind of thing going on. It was just hype from the get-go. And like, just from the moment Wesley was like, we need some extra help, and I was like, who's that going to be? And then Faith comes out and everything. Oh, it was just kind of, it was something I didn't even realise that I needed in that moment, I think. Especially because it was getting to the point where that Cordelia Connor arc was really, really frustrating. Then along comes Faith to save the day, and it was just some really, really great stuff in that episode. And there was only like one Con and Cordelia scene like right at the end, so for the most part it was just in the background, so I could kind of ignore it and forget it. So yeah, I adored this episode so much. I was absolutely buzzing after I'd watched it. I remember being really excited to get the reaction up and everything. I was like, I think I was in a bit of an editing slog during that period of watching anything. But I really kind of edited that quite quickly, I think. I had a lot of fun with it. So yeah, that was definitely one of my favourite episodes of this season. And then number 1, I don't know if this is an unconventional, controversial choice. It certainly would be, I guess, leaning towards what you guys all voted for. But my favourite episode of the season is actually Peace Out, which is episode 21. And that got 1 vote. In your guys' poll. It was 13th of 14. So that might be the biggest difference ever between something in my top 5 and what you guys voted for. But again, I think that speaks to how divisive and crazy that this season of Angel was, and how varied the opinions of it are. So yes, I just came away from this episode being like, oh, I bloody love that. The ending of the Jasmine thing, what Connor had to do, was phenomenal. The fact that Connor got some really great material and everything they kind of explored with him. I've already kind of gushed about all those revelations and that scene with Connor in the church and everything quite a few times in this review already. But easily one of my favourite moments of the season. I just thought it was so good, and Angel kind of exposing Jasmine to the world was pretty badass, and that kind of final confrontation with them, then Connor showing up and punching her face out. Also good. I love that. The kind of twists and turns of it. It was all very well done. And again, I think it was just because it was so unexpected, because I thought the Jasmine stuff was still going to go into episode 22. So it's like, well, they're not, it's going to get even worse now, and then you wrap it up in the end. But they wrapped it up in that episode. I was like, oh my God, this is really exciting. I'm like, what's the next one going to be? That was really exciting. And yeah, just everything about Connor and, which lie he'd rather live in and believe. Some really beautiful character stuff, and like some of the best character work I think season 4 had to offer. And it was just kind of the saving grace and just showing off how good of a character Connor could have been, and was in that moment and in that episode. It was just like, wow, there is some hope for Connor's character here. Like, yes, little did I know he was potentially just going to be written off in the very next episode, but still, I just really love how they kind of resolved everything with the Jasmine arc. The Connor stuff was sublime. I utterly adored that. And yeah, it just kind of left me in a place being like, I have no idea what the finale is going to be about. That's really exciting. So yeah, I kind of came away from that reaction, and in my afterthoughts, I'm like really, really hyped, and like, oh God, it was just so much fun. Like, it's just nice to kind of have gotten away from just being frustrated with what's going on in that arc, because we've kind of gotten a bit past that. Granted, for bad reasons, because Cordy's just completely forgotten about in a coma. But still, it was nice to just sit back and just have fun and enjoy that episode and just be along with the ride, all the emotions of it, get a bit emotional with the Connor stuff, and just, I really loved getting to feel something for Connor other than just annoyance and hatred. that was great. And just the surprise of how they got rid of Jasmine and everything, so unceremonious after everything. But I think that worked in a way that the Beast's death maybe didn't. So yeah, I adore the episode. And when I was kind of tallying everything up, because I knew that was going to be in my top 5, so when I was tallying up all your guys' votes, I was like, oh wow, only one person voted for that. But again, for all I know, that was a lot of people's 4th best episode of the season. But, the faith stuff, spin the bottle, it just works out that way. It could have been different if I'd asked for your guys' top 5. Although, still technically do work out your top 5. But that would just take... it takes ages and ages to sort through all those comments. Anyway, just asking for 3. Because, I got 120 or so comments. So that's 360 or so things that I need to tick off. And then count up and work out, which has got the most, etc., etc. So that just would have added so much more time preparing this review. But yeah, that's kind of a surprise and a very big difference there of opinion. But again, a big showcase of what season 4 I think seems to be in terms of the fandom. Very divisive. I've seen some people saying they absolutely adore this season, and I can see why. I've seen some people saying I hate this season. There's only 2 good episodes in it. I can kind of see why as well. But for me, I'm very much in the middle of that, more so on the side of the positive overall. But yeah, I really, really love Peace Out, basically. But it's not quite time to peace out just yet, because I've got some predictions next for season 5, the final season. But yes, those are my top 5 episodes. Very interesting in comparison to you. But, there's a decent amount of overlap overall. Just the big difference was Peace Out more than anything. So yes, let's see what I've predicted for next season. Okay, so this is actually going to be the very last predictions for next season thing I can do for Angel, because obviously next season is the last one. So we're already getting to an ending in terms of me covering Angel on the channel, which seems bizarre. But here we go. I have 6 predictions for next season. We'll see how well they bode, I guess, in a few months' time. But, I kind of wanted to make some big, bold predictions, maybe. Some fairly obvious ones, I think, as well for next season, given the knowledge that it's the final season. And I think they knew it was going to be the final one. They didn't just end the season, then it got cancelled. They're like, well, we can't wrap this up. I think they knew it was going to be the end, so they could kind of wrap it up in a way. So that kind of also informed a few of my predictions, as opposed to some other outside factors as well. But yeah, my first one is a fairly obvious one, because it just tends to be a running thing. Fred continues to be a cinnamon roll. I'd be very surprised if that's not going to be the case. But for all I know, she's going to be next to turn evil, and they're going to ruin her character next season. If they do, I'll come for you. But yeah, probably a fairly obvious choice, and I imagine a lot of you expected that to be one of my predictions, but it's just an easy one. It fills out the time, it fills out a bit of the page, so there we go. Then my next one is that Angel and Co are going to build Wolfram and Hart into an organisation for good, and I feel like because it's the final season, maybe this is going to be an end game for the show, and they actually completely reform and reshape Wolfram and Hart. Not only this branch, but maybe all of them kind of then following the example of it, and they actually become a big force for good. I think that could be a really interesting ending for the show, given how Wolfram and Hart were first kind of introduced in the pilot. And I think maybe this could be how Angel achieves the Shanshu prophecy, maybe, if he even ever does achieve that. So yeah, I think that's going to be a big driving force for the season, is them kind of running and reshaping what Wolfram and Hart could mean and could stand for. But also, if it continues to just be more of a dodgy kind of place, and it's a morally grey thing that these guys are working there, that's also kind of an interesting idea. But I thought I'd make a different sort of bolder prediction for how maybe the show could start wrapping up, given that I know it's going to be the last season. So that's my next one. And then my other one is, I think a big character from either Buffy or the early days of Angel is going to join the main cast. Now this one comes from the million, billion, trillion comments I got since I started Angel, saying don't watch the credits for 501. So clearly it's going to be an actor or actress that I know joins the main cast, or it's going to be a character that we've already seen before join the main cast, and someone that I'm going to know as well. I just feel like it's more likely to be a character as opposed to an actor that I've seen before, because I've been getting these comments since about season 1, certainly season 2, and way back then people may not have known, what actors that I know. So I imagine it's going to be a character that I am aware of, and probably more so a Buffy character, because a lot of the early Angel characters are still kind of part of the show. So that's going to be my prediction. As to who, I don't know. But because I got so many comments about it, I still get comments about it now. I still get messages on Instagram about it. I get tweets about it. I'm well aware. I mean, all it does is prove that people didn't listen to me at the start of my finale reaction for Angel season 4, because they just skipped the reaction, which people do. I get it. I think the average time people watch my videos for my reactions is about 7 minutes anyway. So people don't give a shit about my afterthoughts or my introductions for the most part, which is fair enough. But yeah, I still get messages about it even now. So yes, that kind of informs me from an outside factor that it's probably going to be a big character joining next season. Obviously, I haven't predicted who, but I guess it's going to happen. And maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe it is just a brand new character and people just don't want me spoiled how they kind of joined the show or something. Maybe it's like a really cool entrance scene and they don't want it spoiled or whatever. They don't want me to see what they look like, anything like that. I don't know. But that's going to be my prediction anyway. Then my next one is the Wesley and Fred relationship is going to be a thing next season. I think the fact that they had them kiss and stuff in this season, the fact that Wesley and Gunn are kind of done, and Lida's out of the picture as well, probably. It's probably a time to explore that, perhaps, because there did seem to be maybe still a thing there, in a sense. I think there was a connection. I always liked the idea of those two together anyway, so I'm kind of predicting it in the hope that maybe it will be explored. So yeah, I think that could be a potential thing. Like, the groundwork, I think, is there. It's been quite the slow burn if it does happen, and I watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I'm more than prepared for slow burn romances. So yeah, that's kind of my thing that could potentially happen. Or if more Wolfram Hart employees are going to be focused on the guy who was showing Fred around that kind of section of Wolfram and Hart, the scientisty guy. I feel like maybe him and Fred might be paired up. I don't know, but I think they're going to go for Wesley and Fred. That might be the direction they go down. But I guess we'll see. Then my next one's kind of a cheeky one again as well. I think there are going to be some major character deaths next season. Now, this is somewhat informed by the fact that I do know of a major character death in the very last episode, because someone spoiled it for me on Twitter. So I do know that's happening. But there could be more than one. It's the last season. Anything goes. More than one main character died at the end of Buffy. So Angel could easily be the same, and anyone could go, because it's the end of the Buffyverse live action as we know it. So yeah, I imagine there will be some major character deaths this season. I mean, every season basically has one, doesn't it? So we'll see. Let's see what season 5 has in store. And then finally, again, this is kind of informed by me knowing it's the final season of the show. If it wasn't the case, I don't think I would be saying this, but I'm going to say that we're going to see Connor again next season. Only because it's the final season. I feel like it would be a cool way of wrapping things up if they revisit him. I don't know if he'll get his memories back. I feel like maybe it will be a certain Doctor Who situation, that when a character lost their memories, they did get brought back into the show at a later date, but they never got their memories back, but there was still a presence. I feel like maybe it's going to be a similar kind of thing to that. And it's more so maybe going to be about Angel and his story than Connor himself. Maybe he'll just be in the background or something, just watching him with his family. I don't think it's going to necessarily be a particularly big role, maybe just a cameo or something. But I think that could be interesting. And only because it's the final season of the show, and I think they did know in advance that they're going to be wrapping things up, they may have had time to orchestrate something like that, just to be like, oh, look how far we've come, this major character and stuff. So that's basically that. If I had an additional prediction, it would be, we're not going to see Cordelia much next season, but I only know that because obviously everything Charisma has kind of been saying, her kind of statements recently made it very clear to me that she's not in season 5 that much, if at all. So kind because I know that for definite. I didn't really include it as a prediction, so there you go. So yeah, that's everything I'm predicting for season 5 of Angel, and no more predictions for Buffyverse live action, because even my Buffy season 7 review, there's not going to be any predictions, because that's the last season of Buffy. So we'll revisit this, see how well we do, and yeah, bizarre to have come to the end of my predicting days. We'll have to wait and see how I fare. Some things I hope I'm wrong about, some things I hope I'm right about. Let's find out, I guess, in due course. Well, folks, here we are. We've made it. This is it. I'm wrapping up now. It's okay. You can all rest. Congratulations if you made it this far. Buy yourself something nice. Eat a cookie. Get some ice cream. Buy that thing you were gawping at in the shop window. So yeah, that is my review of Angel Season 4. Obviously a very divisive season. I look forward to seeing what you guys made of it. In the comments, etc. The differences between our favourite episodes and stuff. Is this one of your favourite seasons? Is it your least favourite? Are you more so middling? Regardless of how you felt about the season, etc., I've certainly had my very mixed thoughts on it. I hope you've enjoyed this review. I hope you've enjoyed my reactions to Season 4 of Angel. Thank you for your support on them. I look forward to being able to go back and reading a lot of those comments on them once I've done with the show. And yeah, I guess we kind of delve into the 5th and final season of Angel. And then we are done with live action Buffyverse altogether, which is nutso. So yeah, that's going to be coming fairly soon. Obviously, not too long after this review will be my Buffy Season 7 review. That will be in the next couple of days after this, I assume, hopefully, all being well. Then in terms of actually starting Angel Season 5, kind of in limbo at the minute. I don't know if it's going to be later this month or in May, because I'm currently in the process of moving. I may be needing to move within the next 2 weeks. So I'm kind of rushing and panicking, trying to find somewhere to live. So you can kind of forgive me for that being my priority right now, because you certainly can't get any bloody reactions if I have nowhere to live. So yeah, that's kind of needs to be my focus right now. So I still don't have an exact, I'm starting Angel Season 5 at this date. It could be later in the month. It could be in May. I'm really not sure yet. But hopefully this big-ass review, however long it is, will tide you over until then. And obviously there'll be the Buffy review coming as well. So I need to get it done before I even start Angel anyway. So yes. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this review. Let me know your thoughts on Season 4 and everything down below. What your favourite episodes, if you didn't have the chance to make them known in the community tab post. And yeah, thank you for your support on Season 4. We've made it, guys. We've got through it. Season 5 is here. I've heard good things, but we'll see how I feel about it when we get there. And yeah, thank you all so much, as always. And until next time, thanks for watching.